I am kind of hoping we will reach the conclusion of this part of the story soon, because I'm loving the shit out of the story, but I'm a little sick of reading. I'm a tiny bit sick of reading. I want to play something else. I want to play some other stuff. So let's hope maybe that we get a good clip through this and maybe close to the end. I don't know, because the thing is you can't rely on the How Long to Beat sites. Because the people on the How Long to Beat sites aren't fucking reading the whole thing out loud. You know. Okay. Okay. Alright, here we go. Supper that evening was a quiet affair. Nearly everyone seemed exhausted. I remember that I was not the only one who hadn't gotten much sleep last night. Eustace did not look at me once during the entire meal. Oh, good. That's awkward. A small part of me hoped that she was going to disappear and return with pudding like she had the first time we had dined together, and reveal that her anger had been a front this whole time. The nuns trickled out one by one. I got up and stretched. I still felt incredibly stiff, and I realized that hiking out to the sheep and staying on my feet all day was not helping my recovery from last night's marathon. Hello, Jack de Orsh. Hello, welcome to the stream. At the very least, I hadn't vomited and passed out today. Margaret and Flora were waiting for me when I left the rectory. Oh, hello. Hello, Hedwig. Flora has a question for you. I'm not 5, you know. I was going to ask anyway. Is something wrong? No, just last night. Did you mean it when you said you'd teach me how to paint? I think she means, would you be free to teach me how to paint, please? Sure. That. I must admit that I had already forgotten this promise. I felt bad. Even under duress, I shouldn't have made a commitment I could ignore so easily just to make Flora feel better. I had absolutely no business teaching anyone to draw, and I desperately wanted to say no. However... yes, of course! Where would be a good place to meet? I don't know. The library? I thought about the clutter on the desks in the library. How about we just do it back in the rectory here? There's a nice big table in there. Sure. Let's meet back here in a few minutes. I need to go and get my supplies. Flora nodded and skulked off in the direction of the dorms. I hadn't thought about it, but I was going to need access to my old cell. All of my illumination supplies, brushes, paints, ink were still in there. My heart sank. I started walking towards the superior's office. I would need her key. Margaret followed. Thank you, Hedwig. I was worried for a moment that we were both going to look like real blackguards. I must admit I'd forgotten all about it, but I'm happy to help. Likewise. She was hanging around me all morning, and I was struggling to remember why. Then I remembered that we'd all had a little heart-to-heart last night. Oh my. Did you forget all about what happened? Oh no. How could I? Some details just took precedence over others. Right. She grinned. I should go check in on the cellars and make sure Adela and Marta haven't killed each other. Talk to you later, Hedwig. She broke from me at the staircase down to the cellars. I continued to the superior's door and gave it a little knock. Oh, Sister Hedwig. Is something wrong? Not at all. I need you to unlock my cell. Whatever for? It's a long story, but I promised Sister Flora that I'd teach her about illuminating manuscripts. And I only just remembered that all my tools and paints are still in there. Flora taking an interest in something? Goodness, we can't let this opportunity go to waste. Give me just a moment. The door closed. Shortly after, it swung open again, and the superior emerged carrying her ring of keys. The unmistakable jingle sent a shiver up my spine. We took the stairs... Whoa! Ah! Okay! We took the stairs up to the second floor and continued down the hall. The huge door that had slammed and scared the sisters all witless was to my left. The wind was shaking it gently as something that big could shake at the very least. The walls around us seemed to pulse and vibrate as the door beat against its frame, as if we were in some great behemoth's lungs. They gotta fix that fucking fucking door. They gotta fix that fucking door. Every time we pass by it. As we turned to the right, I remembered the hideous carving Margaret had shown me with a jolt. Perhaps we really were in the presence of some monstrous creature. I thought about warning the superior about the evil magic circle I had seen, but I could find neither the words nor the courage to bring it up. It was so dark down here. I realized just how out of their way the sisters would have had to come to seek my advice as anchoress. We stopped at the door. I stared at the hagioscope as the sister looked for the right key. It was a bizarre device. I never looked at it from the outside, but it looked rather cobbled together. The metal frame was wedged into the stone brick, and the little door looked ready to rust right off its hinges. I opened it idly and took a peek inside. My heart sank as I realized it was impossible to see through into the cell from this side. There was no way that Catherine and I would have ever been able to see each other. The hole in the wall was big enough to pass the books I needed for transcribing through one at a time, but there was a bend in the middle that prevented direct access. It made me realize just how thick these stone walls were, how isolated I had truly been. I spoke into the hatch. Hello? Feeling nostalgic? Here we are. She selected a key and inserted it into the door. The door lurched open. Oh, how embarrassing. What happened? Nothing. I just forget which way some of the doors open here. She stepped inside. With great trepidation, I followed. It was just as it had been left. I took a deep breath. I felt lightheaded. I went to the shelf and procured a wooden box from the bottom. I could hear the ink bottles rattling inside. This is all I needed. Thank you. Very well. Shall we? I nodded. I didn't want to spend any longer in this place. I was not sure exactly how close the evil symbol was to my cell, but I wanted to put as much distance between it and myself as possible. I turned around and froze. There was something on my bed that should not be there. The half-finished copy of Matthew was sitting there. What the fuck? Wait, what? How did that get there? Okay, hang the fuck on. She threw that out of the fucking window. She threw that out of the window. And then when she went looking for it a few days later, it was gone. It wasn't in the grass anymore. But the only one with the keys to Hedwig's cell is the Mother Superior. Oh, look at this. Violated. Look at this. The only one with the keys is the Mother Superior. So either someone's stealing Soup's keys, or Mother Superior is kind of a little weird. Just kind of a little sus. I don't know. I feel like the game is very specifically trying to not cast suspicion on her, and I'm wondering if that's on purpose. I'm wondering. Spotted something else you needed? No, just... That isn't where I left this. The book? Are you sure? I am positive. You must be mistaken. I have the only key for this room. Perhaps you were reading it when Catherine came to collect you and forgot to put it back. That is not possible. I picked the book up and placed it on top of the box I was carrying. What is it? It's the last book I was writing before... Well, I see. Goodness, it's in rough shape. It looks as if it wasn't properly covered in the cart ride up to the Abbey. James's actual crime may have been negligence. Nonetheless, I understand it must have some sentimental value. May I take it? I don't see why not. You can take anything from here as far as I'm concerned. I see no reason why this room should be locked at all anymore, to tell you the truth. I nodded. I wasn't about to explain that this book appearing on my bed felt like some sort of supernatural threat. At the very least, unfettered access to my old books was a happy outcome. If I could ever brave coming back here again, that is. We left the room and traveled back through the halls. The superior left to return to her office, no doubt swamped with clerical work. I stopped off by the dormitory to deposit the big bedraggled book in my new sleeping quarters. Laura looked highly irritated when I finally made it back to the rectory. I had been worrying about the book, my cell, and that vile sigil all the way there. But my fear was quickly pushed out of my mind by Flora's verbal assault. You said you'd be a few minutes. I'm sorry, I just had to get the superior to help me unlock the door to my old cell. I lifted up the box of supplies and rattled it gently. No, fair enough. Well, I brought some parchment. Oh, good. That would have been very embarrassing if I'd have to make another trip. Flora shrugged and hopped up the stairs to the door. She had laid out 2 piles of simple paper. I set the box down between them and began unloading my supplies, inks, gold paint, and a few horsehair brushes. I pulled a chair out and sat down. Flora followed suit. So, where should we start? That's what I was going to ask you. Well, what's a moment from the Bible you'd like to try illuminating? I was like doing the Annunciation, or... That might be a little advanced for me. Oh, well, how about a letter? Just one letter? That's going a bit far in the other direction, don't you think? Not at all! There's a lot you can do with just one letter. Huh. Okay, then. What letter would be good to start with? I suppose T is always useful. Or A? Flora snickered. Sure. Let's go with A, then. You don't sound particularly enthused. It's a letter. I rummaged around in my box of supplies and produced 2 hardened charcoal stubs. I handed one to Flora, who raised her eyebrows. Where did you get these? You know, I'm not sure. They got passed to me through the squint whenever I got new supplies. They're much nicer than the ones I usually have. I didn't know what to say to this, so I plowed ahead. I took one of the pieces of paper and began to sketch out a square in the top left corner. I love this song too, by the way. This song is great. The paper was rougher and thinner than the parchment I was typically used to. I'd only held paper a few times and never marked it. That's not an A. We're just putting a square down so we know where to fit the letter. Oh. She took up the stick of charcoal and hastily drew a square. It was a bit squiggly. Alright. So, now what I would do is, well, I wasn't sure how to verbally describe my process, so I instead began to draw. In a quick swoop, I outlined a large A in my square that touched all edges of the square, but left plenty of room for artistic embellishment. Flora squinted at my page and then attempted to follow suit. That's a good start. Now what? Well, typically I'll ink the letter first and let it set. I don't do much of the detail work with the charcoal. It's a bit too thick for that. I peered into my supply box, wiggling my fingers. What color would you like your letter to be? Red? Blue? Why are you talking to me like I'm a weird baby? Am I? It's just the color, Flora! Don't make it weird! Yes. You know I'm almost 20, right? You don't need to do this performance for everything. I wasn't aware that I was performing. Right. I'd forgotten just how good Flora was at getting under my skin. My empathy towards her outburst in the Misericorde had overridden my usual distaste for her attitude. Just talk to me normally. This is how I talk to people normally. Come off it. Everything you say is a question, even if you're not actually asking anything. Oh, is that how I come across? We glared at each other for a moment, but Flora eventually started giggling. Just like that. Huh? Oh. I laughed too. I couldn't help it. Happily, the tension seemed to have been released. I guess that is how you normally speak. You know, I haven't spoken to many people face to face. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. I feel a bit of an arsehole now. That's quite alright. Red or blue? Blue. I passed her the blue and took the red one for myself, then laid out 2 inkwells from the box. I popped the lid of mine open, then procured 2 brushes. Lyra was struggling to pull the cork out of her bottle of blue ink. Be careful opening that, it's... She had managed to get the cork out, but in doing so had jostled the bottle forward forcefully. A splash of blue ink landed on her sheet of paper. Here, let me... I reached over and picked her page up, curling it and shaking it to attempt to get some of the ink back into the bottle on the table. I was moderately successful, but there was a blue streak left on the paper. Sorry. It's not a problem. Just be careful, ink is quite valuable. I said I was sorry. I poured some of my red ink into a well, then dipped a brush in. Try and follow the lines of as few strokes as possible. That way it dries without a messy looking texture. I tried to demonstrate, but the paper was soaking up more of the ink than I was used to, rendering this lesson a little moot. I forged ahead anyway until I had a satisfactory letter A on my page. Flora had been peering over my shoulder as I drew, and left to try on her own page once I had finished. She immediately put too much ink on her brush, and the beginning of her first line became a messy blob as a result. I could tell that she was rushing this part, but didn't want to frustrate her any further. Not bad. Shall I do some detailing with the gold paint? I could immediately sense Flora perking up. I uncorked the gold and chose a very thin brush. I like to make little patterns. Question, is there actual game or is it genuinely just an audiobook? Yeah, there is no game. This is a kind of visual novel that people call a kinetic novel. I am really just going through a book here. I'm sorry if that's not very interesting, but I'm really engaged in this story, so that's why I'm going through this right now. And you can cheat a bit if you focus on drawing on one half like this. You can just copy it on the other side. That's still drawing two very detailed things. Wow, that looks awesome. Look at that. I don't think that's much of a cheat. Just give it a try. Okay. How do you do that, though? Are those just random lines? I think of them as vines. Huh. That makes sense, I guess. That's a good start. Keep filling it in. I sat and watched her fill in the square of gold lines. No patterns really ever came together, and I could tell she wasn't enjoying herself. I tried to avoid staring. I knew that I wouldn't appreciate having my shoulder looked over in my cell, and Flora was liable to bite my head off if I did anything that could be interpreted as condescending. Ugh. So, what got you interested in art? I don't know. Did Catherine draw much? A bit. And she was going to teach you at one point before? Yep. What sort of things did she paint? Lots. Anything you particularly liked? Sure. There was this one she showed me that I really liked. Oh? Yeah, it was her holding some guy's head. What? It was so awesome. Hang on. That's kind of a weird coincidence, isn't it? Catherine was found holding her own head. Her body was found holding her own head. So, why does that mimic something she once painted? This is interesting. It was so awesome. Whose head was it? No idea. Goodness. It was probably Holofernes, though. I breathed a little internal sigh of relief. Of course! Do you like that story? Yeah, it's awesome. Judith is a very interesting book. Have you read the whole thing? No, just the gory parts. I resisted the urge to bang my own head against the table. We love the gory parts of the Bible. We love it. But you know the general thrust of it, yes? Yeah, she pretends to be friends of Holofernes and then cuts his head off. Do you know why she cuts his head off? It was a bit of an arsehole. How's your drawing coming along? I could hear that my voice was a bit pitchier than normal. Laura leaned back in her chair and gestured at her paper. That's a great first attempt. It was sloppy, but earnestly, it was not so bad. It wasn't so bad. I was certain I'd done worse than when I was first starting out. It still feels a bit empty. You could add something to one of the corners, maybe. Like what? What about a crucifix? Boring. A crucifix is not boring. It's 2 lines. I'm not being blasphemous. I just mean, you know, it's not an exciting drawing. I don't know then. A bird? Or a cat? Oh, that's a fine idea. Laura leaned forward in her seat again, looking very engaged all of a sudden. Laura really likes cats, doesn't she? Yeah, can you draw a cat? I don't think I've ever tried. How about we both try, one separate from the illuminated letters, and compare? Sure. We both started sketching with charcoal on our own papers. I tried to remember what cats look like. I found them cute despite their reputations. I soon realized that I only had ever seen the one scampering out of the kitchen. I actually don't know if I've ever seen a cat up close now that I think about it. Really? Really, I just know of them mostly. There are lions and leopards and so on in the Bible, but you never saw one before you became a nun? That was so long ago, I could scarcely remember if I had. So you weren't born here then? No. Where do you come from then? Trier. Hedwig von Trier? Wow, I never would have guessed from your accent. You sound very English. I have been here most of my life. Where's Trier? Is that like a German? Like the von I would assume means that it's like German. I don't know, I've never heard of that place. Yeah, but you're twice as old as I am. Some people's accents stick even when they move. Like Adela. Moira and Catherine, too. First of all, I am not that much older than you. Do you remember much from before you moved? How long ago was it? Almost 20 years ago. Wow. So you were in there for as long as I've been alive? Yes. So you were like 20 before you moved and still lost your accent? I would have been about 5 or 6, thank you very much. Oh. Or, well, 7 or 8 or 9 maybe. It'd be funny if you brought the accent back for a day or two. Just confuse everyone for a bit. Hello, my name is Hedwig. Something like that. I smacked my charcoal down on the table in exasperation. My cat drawing as finished as it was ever gonna get. Let's compare our drawings now, shall we? Why does it look like that? Why does it look like that? That's the most perturbed cat I've ever seen. Holy shit. This cat has the morbs. This is a cat with severe anxiety. That's not what a cat looks like. I tried my best. What's even better? This is why do they have human noses? Why do they have human noses? Cat, let me take a look at you. What kind of nose do you have? Yeah, cat, you have a cat nose. Here, let me find a picture of my cat. Let me find a picture of my cat so we can compare. Hang on. When was the last time? Oh yeah, here we go. This is a perfect picture of my cat, actually. Yeah, there we go. Chat, what do you think? Actually, the resemblance is kind of striking, isn't it? Actually. Actually, I think she might be onto something. She might be onto something. Is that what a cat looks like? It's closer than yours. Yours has a very human face. So does yours. Whatever. Cat eyes don't look like that. Is that so? Yeah, I think so, at least. They never sit still long enough for people to draw them. She's trying to draw a cat. Laura, do you know something about that cat Angela's been chasing for weeks? Look, you got to promise not to tell anyone. I honestly felt relieved. Compared to the secrets I was keeping for Catherine, the Superior, and myself, Laura's request was positively quaint. Of course. It's just a cat. Yes, but nearly everyone here hates cats. I have to pretend they're vermin too, but he's such a sweet little thing. He? Oh, the cat. His name is Campy. That's unique? Catherine picked it. Oh. Perhaps I was wrong about the simplicity of this promise if I was tacitly protecting a dead woman's secret as well. The full name's Campignon? Something like that. She liked fancy, classical-sounding names a lot. So the cat was hers? Yeah, I guess. I don't know if you could really call him anyone's cat. He just showed up one day and took a liking to Catherine, and she gave him a name and fed him scraps and stuff. And now he's your charge. Yup. That's sweet. I meant it when I said I need you to promise not to tell anyone. Some of the law are likely to give Campy a swift kick if he gets too close. I'd be in so much trouble if anyone found out. Don't worry. I can keep a secret. Thanks. She looked away as she said this, and her face showed not even a hint of a smile. But I still felt good. I felt like I had made a real connection. It must be nice to have something to remember Catherine by. Well, shall we finish for now? I guess. Should we plan on meeting up again for more practice soon? She shrugged and glanced at her papers. Maybe. And here, take these. I handed her the sticks of charcoal for practicing on your own. Since you like to draw. All right. Maybe I hadn't made as real a connection as I'd hoped. And just let me know if you ever want another lesson and we can plan for it. Sure. She scooped up her drawing and stuffed it into her robe and got up to leave without pushing her chair back in. Bye, Hedvig. Have a good evening, Flora. I was left alone to pack my supplies up. I had to resist snapping one of the brushes in half. God damn it, Flora! Flora! Learn some fucking manners! Goddamn kids these days! What is this? It's kind of creepy. Okay. Alright, I'm ready. There you go. I was completely exhausted by the time I made it to the dormitory. The relatively light art supply box weighed heavy like a millstone going up the stairs. I practically slammed it onto my desk as soon as I had made it to my room. An early night was the only thing I could think about. I got into my night clothes as fast as I could, as if I was trying to prove to myself that I indeed intended to follow through on the idea. My body was so stiff that even stripping out of my habit felt laborious, and when I bent down to pick my nightdress off of the floor, I wondered if I even had the energy to stand up straight again. I groaned impolitely as I straightened out and let the clothes slip over me. Never again in my life did I want to run or hike. I was ready to sleep. However, as I ran my hands over the mattress in an attempt to straighten it out a little, I realized I'd forgotten something important. There was still a book on my bed. The copy of the Gospel of Matthew that I dropped off in a hurry before returning to Flora. As ominous as it was, I was at least glad that I hadn't smacked my head into it like I had with the copy of Medea currently underneath the bed. I opened the book. The cover was still slightly damp, and some of the pages had fused together. I thumbed through carefully to the pages that had been opened when I had vomited all over it. The black bile had faded, but it was quite obviously ruined. I was not sure what I was looking for. A clue, perhaps, of who had returned it to my cell or how. Perhaps some demon had magicked it through that accursed sigil. Why, exactly, this devil's nefarious plan included returning books to rooms they had been thrown out of, I had no immediate hypothesis. I turned to the page I had been working on when my time in the cell had been interrupted. Matthew 5:37. As I studied the ruined pages and saw no hidden messages nor threats, my anxiety evaporated. I slammed the book shut and threw it onto the floor with a thud. It was obviously another one of Eustace's pranks, I reasoned. The timing was certainly convenient after the threats her ghost had given me in the Misericorde. I scoffed aloud with some small hope that she was somehow within earshot. Undoubtedly, if I hadn't knocked her onto her arse and unmasked her that night, this book would have been revealed to me at some portentous moment. She must have stored it in my cell to keep it out of view until whenever suited her little plan. I could just see her casually asking the superior for the key in that infuriatingly flat voice of hers. She'd probably said she needed something for my shelf for the library. I slammed my fist into my pillow and buried my face in the divot. Then I remembered something. I pulled myself up on my knees and lifted my pillow. The little strip of black cloth was there. Proof! I reached over the bed for my stocking and stuffed it inside. I couldn't wait to see the look on Eustace's face when I showed her that. If I could find a missing patch on her frock! I laid down feeling satisfied. I imagined profuse apologies over and over, and yet I still went to sleep angry. The morning offices and luncheon passed in a blur the next day. I went through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd sleepwalked through several days when I'd been feeling morose, but today was different. There was a high-pitched whine between my eyes so intense that I had a headache by the end of service. I felt as light as a bee and equally as prone to sting whoever bothered me. It was not all anger. Some of it, I realized as luncheon came to a close, was nervous anticipation. I kept glancing over at Eustace, who seemed, to my chagrin, completely unbothered. The superior was waiting for us outside of the rectory when we all left. She pointed at Eustace, Moira, and myself and beckoned for us to join her. Are you all ready for a little fun? Absolutely! Good. It's high time the women of this abbey made an appearance in Lynbarrow village, and I thought an adventure outside the abbey would be an exciting little adventure for our newest... Well, not newest, but you know what I mean. That's you! That's me. Thank you, Moira. I love you. I love you, Moira. Just a little treat. As a treat. I was losing count of the little lies I was having to go along with for the sake of this quest. Moira and Darcy worked hard yesterday to bake some fritters to share with the townsfolk. What is it we're actually meant to do there? The superior shot me a quizzical look. Spread some cheer, of course. Attend to the people's spiritual needs. Nothing heals the soul like a sweet treat. They're really good, too, if I do say so myself. Eustace had said nothing for the course of this entire conversation. She remained silent as the superior led us across the grounds to the front gate. A cart and donkey were waiting for us. There was a sturdy chest loaded onto the wooden cart that looked like one of us could have fit inside snugly. If it was full of sweet fritters, Darcy and Moira must have been very busy. I had no idea we kept a mule here. We do not. Typically, we have to send word to have one delivered from the village if we need to travel, but this one has remained here ever since the incident. Oh. This was the donkey and cart that James had been driving when he was last free. Just how many animals was Darcy technically responsible for at this point? Moira stepped into the driver's seat of the cart, leaving me and Eustace to sit facing each other in the back. The superior looked uncharacteristically amused at the sight of us loaded into the vehicle. My girls, off on a diplomatic mission together. Had I the means, I would commission a painting. I haven't been down to the village in months at least. This is going to be a riot. She shook the reins and the cart wobbled forward. Moira turned to wave at the superior. Eustace and I followed suit, although we were both less enthusiastic than Moira. Moira would go colon 3. No. Darcy is the colon 3 girl. The superior disappeared behind the road as it began to curve downwards. I looked ahead and suddenly felt a wave of panic as I realized just how long and winding the path down the mountain was and how far afield I was about to find myself. Stuck in a cart with someone I'd rather never speak to again, no less. Oh, this is making me a little motion sick. Oh, God. Oh, wait, I don't like this. So, this will be new for you. I suppose it will be. Listen, Eustace, I have no real interest in speaking with you at the moment. You two, let's not fight, Let's pretend all our little problems only exist in the Abbey and how here we're just traveling missionaries. Or brave soldiers on patrol. No. Or adventurous outlaws. Hedwig, I owe you an apology. More than one! She sighed and adjusted how she was sitting. She rested her forehead in her hands and looked at the floor of the cart. I should have said something yesterday, but I was indisposed. So, I'm sorry this took so long, first of all. And I apologize for, well, remind me. I felt strangely powerful. I folded my arms. I am sorry that I dressed up as a ghost. I'm sorry that I tried to scare you. I went a bit far. You did it more than once. Yes. How? Why? I mean, it was so elaborate. Well, I am the sacrist. I saw the suit of armor and thought, well, this could be good for a lark. What on earth for? Some lark! It's Abbey tradition to do some sort of hazing prank. I just got carried away. That is so petty! Petty and cruel! Even if it was appropriate to haze nuns, which it is not, why couldn't it be nicer? Aren't there any nice pranks? You're right. What about, I don't know, a surprise feast or a gift? Something along those lines. I won't argue with you. You could have just said boo, perhaps. That would still be a touch mean-spirited, but you killed a goat for your own entertainment. Eustace shook her head. I did not kill a goat. That is entirely in your imagination. I saw it plainly. Anything you saw like that was a trick of the mind, I promise. So I'm mad, is that it? No, it happens to everyone. In a heightened emotional state, you'll often see things that conform to your expectations. Or fears, as it were. That is ridiculous. It's true. Did you know there's a mosque in Turkey where worshippers believe they saw the ghost of a young woman in the shadows? It sounds ridiculous, but so many people have claimed to have seen her it could hardly be an accident. They all see a girl wearing a crown. I don't particularly care what they're up to in Turkey. Eustace let out a heavy sigh. Look, the point is sometimes people see things that aren't there that feel very real. I promise you that I did not kill a goat. I may have been nasty to you, but I would not have killed an innocent animal just to scare you. So, there was no goat at all? I did not kill a goat in front of you. I would not do that. But you would dress up as a ghost. Yes. And wave a flaming sword around. Yes, when you put it that way, it does sound rather a cruel joke. How did you even light the sword on fire? I brushed the blade with oil and held it up to a torch. That's all. I looked her dead in the eyes. She matched my gaze for a moment before the cart hit a bump and her glasses were knocked askew. Moira was chuckling softly. Whoops, sorry, I'm not very good at this. Eustace rearranged her glasses and sighed. I don't always have a perfect grasp of how people might react to the things I say or do. Sometimes I run with an idea that isn't as clever as I think it is, or speak my mind to people who weren't interested in my input. I'm sure you've noticed that I can be rather inscrutable? I was going to say flat, but I'll take inscrutable. Eustace is Eustace! Yes. Thank you, Moira. See? At any rate, I would really like to put this behind us. We have to work together, after all. Will you accept my apology? For what? Eustace was approaching this request as if my acquiescence was guaranteed, but I did not respond in kind. I felt vindictive, more vindictive than I had felt in my entire life. She looked surprised that I hadn't budged. For my prank, as I said. And my behavior in general, I suppose, which, as you say, can be inscrutable. I will do my best to change that. Does that include moving my things around? Perhaps putting things in my cell to find later? What? I found it. The copy of Matthew I dropped out of the window the night you were watching me in my cell. Hedwig, I do not know what you are talking about. You have no reason to lie about this anymore. I saw you in your ridiculous costume the very night in my cell, I could see you in the grass. I was not there. My temper flared and I let out an embarrassing noise, somewhere between a groan and a shriek. I pulled up my frock and pulled the piece of cloth I had found outside the abbey out somewhat awkwardly. Eustace looked utterly nonplussed. I found this out there! Who else could it have been but you? Any one of us? A drifter? A soldier marching past the abbey who got his cloak stuck on a branch that just so happened to coincide with one woman's mad delusion months later. It could have been anyone, Hedwig. But it wasn't me. Why should I believe you? After what you did the other night. You! I could feel myself turning scarlet as I sputtered. I noticed Moira shrinking in her seat ahead of us, and I suddenly felt very embarrassed. Are you going to hit me again? No, of course not. All right. Well, you could if you wanted to. I don't want to. Huh. Well, that's good. She rubbed her cheek. It did hurt quite a bit. I felt horrible now. I looked towards the back of the cart for a while, watching the road move beneath us. I am sorry. Truly. And you promise you haven't left any mysterious books for me anywhere? I did not put that book in your cell. I haven't ever been in your cell at all, as a matter of fact. I looked back towards Eustace. She was holding a hand out to me, and she had the faintest hint of a pleading look in her eye. I was not sure what to do. I was furious with her still, but I knew that letting that anger stew any longer would only serve to make me miserable. After all, we had to work in the same room. Not only that, but I still felt highly guilty for attacking Eustace in response to her practical joke. Justified or not, it was not a response that had been in my repertoire, and I very much wanted to never feel compelled to violence ever again. Sleepy, thank you for the 33 months! Really? You've been enjoying it? I'm glad to hear that. You know, I was honestly convinced that I was just reading just for myself and for Claire, and that like nobody would fucking listen to this. But I'm really glad to hear that people are enjoying this as well. Thank you again, Sleepy. I wanted to bury those thoughts, those feelings deep in the ground forever. I was still mulling over my response when a pair of fritters appeared in front of my face. Would these help? These do not look appetizing when bit crushed, I must admit. Eustace and I both looked over at Moira, whose back was still turned to us as she watched the road ahead. She had reached one arm behind her, two tasty-looking pastries held like Adela's cards between her fingers. I tucked the little black cloth I had been waving in Eustace's face back into my stocking and sighed. Just wondering. Hehehe. Eustace and I both took one. I nibbled at it and instantly felt at peace. Wow, these are good. They were supposed to all be for the village, but I snuck a few away for the trip. I'm glad you did. I could hear Moira crunching into her own fritter. Ooh, so am I now. Goodness, these are some lucky people we're about to visit. I thought you didn't like Limbero, Moira. Oh, I have my criticisms. Eustace took another bite of her pastry. I suppose we all do. Catherine most of all. I doubt she would have approved of this gesture. Oh, she would have done it. She'd have just complained a lot beforehand. And after. They chuckled as if sharing a private joke. We finished our fritters. Eustace licked her fingers and wiped the crumbs off of her frock before extending a hand out to me again. Friends? I paused for a moment, but I couldn't keep this self-righteous act up much longer. Even if I did not fully believe that Eustace hadn't also placed that book in my cell as part of some elaborate next step in her foiled prank, I suppose I had no reason to hang it over her head forever. I reached out and grabbed Eustace's wrist, and her fingers curled around my own. Friends. Eustace smiled, but her face soon returned to its default flat expression as soon as she leaned back against the side of the cart. So, why wouldn't Catherine have liked doing this? She also had opinions about the townsfolk. I'm a little shocked. Does anybody have a good relationship with the town? I'm sure the superior handles it all well enough. Surely it feels a little odd that nobody from the village came to seek your advice when you were an anchoress. I was surprised until I had it explained to me that, well, we're having to take a cart ride to even get there, aren't we? That's right. I think that people never really liked that fact. It put us on the wrong foot from the get-go. But Limbero Abbey is rather old, isn't it? Surely things might have, I don't know, improved? Right, the distance and inconvenience is just part of it. Well, you'll see. I suppose if I had to put it delicately, if we had the ability to choose the kind of villagers our abbey served, which we don't! Of course not. But if we did, well, it wouldn't be a town like Limbero. I was, quite frankly, appalled by this. If I hadn't already shaken hands and made up with Eustace, I might reconsider agreeing to the endeavor after hearing such conceited talk. What a horrible thing to say! It is what it is. You'll see when we get there. You're not all bad. I was trying to think of things to say that wouldn't reopen the just sutured wound between Eustace and myself, and was struggling to come up with anything. However, just as the cart rounded a sharp switchback corner, I thought of something Catherine had said in the Misericorde. I hadn't dared to mention the assignment the superior had given me for this excursion, but I reasoned that since Catherine herself had mentioned it to me while drinking, it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Catherine is from this village, isn't she? Catherine was Irish! She means Catherine the First. Oh! Silly me. Sorry! Anyway, yes, Catherine used to live in Lynbarrow. She mentioned something about being run out of town? She seemed rather bitter about it. As well she should! I'm surprised she told you all of this. But yes, it's true. We don't talk about it much. It's a fast way to put her in a rotten mood. I would feel the same. It's so unfair. Would it be prying too much to ask what exactly happened? She was quite vague about it. It's not our story to tell. Like I said, it's a touchy subject. Suffice to say, it put me off of the town. The way they treated her. I won't pry. That's good. I'd be chuffed that she told you anything about it at all, though. That's real trust, that. This line of questioning seemed to be a non-starter. I'd hoped for a moment that I could get my assignment completed before stepping out of the cart. A wave of panic hit me as I realized that not only were my environs about to be completely unfamiliar, I was about to be surrounded by people. Strange, new people who sounded like they were predisposed to dislike me. I did poorly enough navigating my own conflicts. Now, though, I would be forced to deal with a feud that sounded like it had been simmering for years. How long ago had Catherine been ousted from Lynbarrow? How long before that had the townsfolk presented the Abbey up on the hill? I was inheriting a mess that may well have started before I was even born. The rest of our journey went without conversation. Eustace furrowed her brow and rested her chin on her hands, gazing out of the back of the cart for the remainder of the trip. I couldn't bring myself to relax. That the miasma of indignance towards Eustace had more or less dissipated, now panic was setting in. I began to worry about falling out of the cart and hurting myself. What if I got lost in town and Moira and Eustace were forced to leave me there? What if a particularly large crate fell on my head? What if I was set upon by strangers who have murderous or lascivious intent? If I had to choose one of these scenarios, which was most likely, and which would be my preferred outcome? I was mulling over these ghoulish bits of calculus so intensely that I didn't notice that the cart had stopped. Hedwig. We're here! Moira had stopped the cart next to a wooden post on the edge of a very muddy road. Ugh, I should have remembered to wear boots. I remembered! Moira finished tying the donkey's reins to the post and enthusiastically lifted her robe to show off her shoes. Wow, fancy. I didn't know there were any boots at the Abbey. They're a must once it starts snowing. Ask the superior about it when you get a chance. Although, the ones we get typically aren't as posh as those. These were a gift! Lucky you. Hedwig, don't worry about the mud. Just get out of the cart. It looks really foul. Jump over here! It's not quite as mushy. I don't know. Just step down. It's really not that bad. I glanced between Eustace, whose robe was already getting muddy around the fringe, and Moira, who was enthusiastically gesturing at me from her position on a harder packed bit of road. Against my better instincts, I awkwardly positioned myself on the edge of the car and... Wow! Miraculously, I'd landed on the sturdy bit of the road. My legs, clearly still weak from my recent bout of sprinting, screamed at me to never do that again and gave way almost immediately in protest. Luckily, Moira caught me. My head crashed into her shoulders, and we stumbled together for a few steps before regaining our footing. Sorry. Don't be. Who would have known that we had a little acrobat tucked away in that cell? Yes, very well done. Unfortunately, I'm going to need both of you to step back over here to help me with the fritters. Thankfully, we didn't need to lug the whole crate around. While we did end up having to traipse around in the mud to retrieve them, Darcy had organized the sweet treats into 3 cloth sacks for us to carry. I realized that the heaviest thing about our cargo had been the chest itself, which looked like it might have been able to withstand a catapult. Where should we start? Eustace nodded towards a farmhouse not far from where our donkey was hitched. Here is as good a place as any. We lugged our bags of baked goods towards the modest house. The land was just on the edge of the huge hill we had just ridden our way down. A few trees dotted the well-grazed lawn, and a lone horse stood idly close to the stable. I couldn't help but feel that it looked deep in thought. As we approached, a side door to the house swung open. He looks so differently drawn. I can't I can't help but notice that all the male characters are kind of like hastily drawn. They're like an afterthought, I think. What's all this then? We come bearing gifts. Is that right? A woman emerged behind the gruff-looking man. Okay, she looks kind of hasty too. Both of them looked cautious. Feels like it's been donkey's years since you lot came down here. Sister Moira and Sister Eunice, right? Eustace, milady. My apologies. I don't recognize this one. Oh, this is Sister Hedwig. She's new. I tried to say something, but all I could muster was a little noise. I waved instead. We heard about Catherine. Terrible thing, that. I can't help but feel responsible. Please don't. It's not your fault. James was a troubled boy well before we started looking after him. No helping some people, that's what I've learned. James lived here? Aye, my nephew. Oh, it's a little funny, that one, but I never would have. I didn't know he was that kind of blackguard. Lost his family in the war years ago. Aye. They were taken for spies traveling home one night. He'd be, what, 22, 23 now? He was supposed to be running the family in by now, but he wasn't cut out for being a landlord. I'm not sure there's much of an inn left. Anyway, we took him in and put him to work on the farm. We do modest work here. A little bit of animal husbandry, but the real money is in stabling the horses for folk in town. James was a real helping hand on a good day, but he had a habit of running off whenever he felt like it, sleeping in, being a nuisance in town. God rest him, but he was a sloppy worker. Terrible over the animals. Never had more livestock go missing than when we left it up to him. We were doing something good taking him in. He had potential. Some people find their way later than others. I really do believe that. It was only right. But now, here we are. If you're here to solicit donations, it'd only be right for us to be generous. Oh, that's so kind! We're actually here to bring you something. Moira opened her bag and held it out to the couple. Well now, did Sister Darcy make these? That's right. In that case, I don't mind if I do! He and his wife happily took a pastry each. They bit into them, and I could see a sense of relief overtake their worried faces. Crumbs, that's good. Too right! He took another bite. As he munched, he pointed a thick, callous finger toward me. So what's your story? That's not altogether very interesting. I heard about Catherine, and I felt compelled to help. After all, she was a chronicler, and I used to write all day, so... She was our anchoress. Ah, I see. One of those hermits. I didn't know they could just up and stop. It's unusual, certainly. I imagine it must be quite strange leaving a position like that after so much time. Were you born in there? No. I was very young when I started, though. What's your favorite thing about being free? Oh, don't upset her. She wasn't not free before. It's an important job, isn't it? That's right. Oh, I don't mean to offend. Still, though, it must be very different to be out and about all of a sudden. Hedwig is taking a real shine to her new work. Yeah, she's really been putting her back into it. I couldn't tell if this was meant to be a jab at the altercation. I thought we had just put it behind us or not, but it irritated me all the same. Well, that's good to hear. I'm sorry I never made use of your services while you were anchored. Only it's quite a commitment getting up there and back. We had James make that trip more often than not. There was one thing he was always good for, was that. Mail supplies, that sort of thing. That was all his purview. I suppose he must have set his wicked sights on Sister Catherine. Maybe he was watching her this whole time. Best not to speculate. And don't blame yourselves. If it would make you feel better to make some sort of donation, I can let the Superior know. Not that we came here to solicit that sort of thing, mind you. Oh, wait, no, wrong voice. Oh, no, of course not. I hope I didn't offend. No. It would only be right. It would only be right, yes. I wanted very badly to tell these poor people that I'd spoken of James, and I was trying my very best to help him. Whatever joy the fritters had brought was nothing compared to the pain I could sense behind their rugged faces. These were delicious, by the way. Sister Darcy always was a talent. You lot should come down here more often. I agree. I suppose you'll be off to see the town now. Yes. Hopefully we brought enough of these. I won't bother you for seconds then. You have a good day now, sisters. Pax Vobis. We all exchanged nods. I wonder what that means. Pax Vobis. Pax means peace, I think. Eustace led the way past the farm, back toward the road. That went better than I had feared. Really? I'd rather get cut than do that again. Those poor people. They were really very sweet. How horrible for them, though. I only meant that, I don't know, in the cart right down, I was half expecting to be met with swords and spears. Who says we won't be? We're not in the village proper yet. I stopped dead in my tracks. The buildings ahead of us loomed like some dark fortress's gate. I suddenly became very aware once again that I was further from my cell than I'd ever been. Further than the hills. Further than the hospitalum. Oh, Eustace, don't scare her! Sorry. I'm just being glib. Are you ready, Hedwig? Hold on. I doubled over, still clinging to my bag of fritters. I tried my best to take deep breaths, but it was difficult. I was no longer in complete control of my faculties. Hedwig? You can do it, Hedwig! I'm so far from home. You have friends with you. It's all right. But if I just drove the cart back myself, I could set someone else back down with it to collect you. I've had quite enough for a day, I think. Do you know how to drive a cart and mule? It's going to be fine. Look, I was just grousing on the ride down. It's just silly personal drama. I probably made it seem bigger than it really is. At worst, it'll be a little awkward. You can handle awkward. Want to go back? Look, if someone is rude to you, you have my permission to slap them. Eustace! I took a particularly large gulp of air and stood up straight. Uh-oh. Look, you definitely shouldn't slap anyone here. I was joking. It was funny. Okay. But seriously, do not. I won't! I would never. Guess I got lucky. Are you ready? Let's get this over with, shall we? Entering the village proper was immediately dizzying. I'd only just started growing accustomed to the size and scope of the abbey. But now I was surrounded by buildings and streets that were unto themselves their own little abbeys. Despite being spread out between buildings, courtyards, gates, and windows, I've been able to think about Limbarrow Abbey as one place. Leaving my cell had been painful, but I was at least still in a world I could understand. I could not bring myself to think about the village in the same way. Music again, damn! This sounds like some peak Akira Yamaoka here. Even though it was the village of Limbarrow, I tried to stretch my understanding to include all of these places in my head as Limbarrow, but it was impossible. I had no idea how Eustace and Moira could walk so calmly between shops and houses and inns and not feel terrified. Turn down the volume a little bit. Does that sound mad? It sounds mad to say it out loud, but it really was impossible to comprehend. One could not walk, I presumed, from one house into another the way I was allowed in the abbey. The only place I was restricted from going was the back of Eustace's library, which was really only a request. I watched people knocking on doors and waiting for someone to invite them in. I saw men standing impatiently outside of shops waiting for proprietors to return. Everyone, it seemed, was beholden to the terms of some uneasy peace treaty. Everyone was the king of their own little castle. Living like this would make me even more miserable than the abbey did. As we passed people in the street, we would offer them fritters from our bags. Most conversation was short, if there was conversation at all. Moira was perfectly chipper, and Eustace maintained her usual calm demeanor through even the most brusque encounters. Brusque? Is that how you pronounce that? The rudest people acted as if we weren't even there. One even bumped Eustace on the shoulder, and I'm sure it was on purpose. Eustace didn't react at all, save for a quietly muttered curse word I dare not repeat. For my own part, I was doing my best to keep up the act. I dragged my feet in lockstep with my cohorts. I went through the motions of lifting up the bag. I didn't speak unless I absolutely needed to. I forced a smile to each passerby instead, hoping it would be enough. My cheeks were already numb by the end of the first street. Goodness, we still have so many left. Darcy made too many as usual. That's just like her. She's very kind. Is there something wrong with her making lots? No, of course not. No! It's sweet how excited she gets about helping out. Oh. Not every observation about someone is a criticism. Oh, be nice. Weren't you just getting snitty about Hedwig calling you... I can't even remember now. Inscrutable. That wasn't really a criticism either. It seemed that Moira was the only one of us having any fun. Ah, there's so much! We trudged through moist streets, passing out fritters and knocking on doors. Not a single person had anything to say to us beyond a courtesy greeting and thanks, and many people didn't even have those to spare. I don't think anyone is home. Try just one more time. I'd feel terrible if we missed someone. Not a peep. All of a sudden, I was soaked. Oh god, no! It happened so fast that I didn't even realize what had happened at first. It felt as if someone had boxed me around the ears. Ah! Hedwig! What an... Ugh! An unconcerned-looking woman was looking down at us from the window above, holding a still dripping laundry bucket. My apologies, miss. I didn't see you three down there. Of course not. It's very easy to miss nuns at the door. Well, there's no need for sarcasm, miss. Neither Eustace nor Moira had gotten very wet at all. I, however, was covered head to toe. There was an unpleasant, Fausty smell coming from the water, and I realized that my bag of fritters was sopping wet as well. Would you like a fritter, madam? No, thank you, miss. Of course, madam. We'll just be off then. Have a good day, miss. The woman retreated from the window without so much as an apologetic glance in my direction. Well, at least it was water. Here, Hedwig. Let me carry that. No. If you're sure. Jeez! This place fucking sucks! Eventually, we came to a square with several diverging streets. Eustace leaned against the wall, looking fed up. Moira looked as if she had finally noticed that Eustace and I were not as sociable as she was. Her pleasant smile morphed into an expression altogether more concerned. How are you two doing? I just want to get this over with. Yes, I've had quite enough of this, to be honest. Nobody seems to even care that we're here. Maybe it'd be best to just cut our losses and go home. We can't do that. No, that wouldn't be right. But why not? Both of you had horrible things to say about the people here on the way down. Not so loud! With all honesty, I must agree with them now. And now you're dedicated to finishing a completely thankless task for them. Why? She has a point. I mean, I don't love the idea of telling the superior we gave up, but... We really can't go back until we've finished. Why not? Eustace? Moira motioned for Eustace to come closer and whispered something into her ear through her hood. Oh. Right. I'm sorry, Hedwig, but we really need to do this job properly. I know it's difficult. What's going on? Nothing! It's really nothing. What kind of fool do you take me for? What did you tell her? Hedwig, why does nobody treat me with any sort of respect? Am I so difficult to explain things to? Would my fragile little mind simply burst if you explained whatever you told me to her to me as well? No, Hedwig, please. You're making a scene again. Moira took a step forward, positioning herself between Eustace and myself. Hedwig, I don't think you're foolish or difficult or anything like that. So what did you tell her? I can't say. The fury I'd been nursing before the cart ride was back in full force, and this time I could not control it. I raised my hand and Moira flinched, but she stood her ground. I did not hit her, of course, although I would not like to dwell on how close I came. Instead, I jabbed a finger in her face to gesture angrily. So you're lying, then? No, Hedwig, don't! Oh, how like Elisha I felt. Not bald, but nonetheless belittled and insulted for things outside my control. I cursed Moira. I cursed Eustace. I cursed the whole town for all to hear. We need to get her back to the Abbey. This isn't healthy for her. But I hope Angela is right about bears. Oh, wait. I hope Angela is right about bears. Huh? I said, I hope Angela is right about the bloody bears! I don't follow. Eustace was nonplussed, but Moira had pieced my admittedly cumbersome insult together. Tears were rolling down her cheeks. You don't really mean that, Hedwig. Her sniffling caught me off guard. But before I had a chance to feel sorry, she had stormed off away from the town square. Her bag of fritters was still in her hand. I remember that it bounced so inelegantly it would have been funny in any other situation. Eustace cast a mild yet dark expression at me. If you wanted to get back to the Abbey sooner, you should have kept that little tantrum to yourself. Well, what did she tell you? Okay, just scream mid-song. Just scream mid-song. Never you mind. She hoisted her bag over her shoulder and made to follow Moira. Stay put. I'll clean up this mess. Wait, you're leaving me alone? Yes. But no, that's silly. Let me come with you. I'm sorry about all that. This is just so different and stay put. Why? Because I don't really want to be around you right now. But we're friends still, right? We said so. You said so in the cart. Without another word, she turned around and set off after Moira. I was left all alone in the town square, my frock still dripping mildewy water onto the cobblestones. I let the wet sack of food fall to the ground and sat down on a low wall. I gripped the bricks, digging my fingernails into the hard stone and biting my own lip, trying not to cry. Was my behavior so out of line? I deeply regretted upsetting Moira, but I'd withstood just about enough for one adventure. I was in a strange place where strange things were happening to me, and now I was all alone. Every now and then one of the townsfolk would walk through the square, but they paid me no mind. A dog wandered over to me and I froze. I'd never seen one before. I recognized it instantly, but I was scared stiff. Even if it was a farm animal, I couldn't help but notice its sharp teeth and animal eyes. Shoo, I'm not food. The hound ignored my pleas and instead began snuffling around my legs. I held my breath as it rudely prodded my stomach with its snout all of a sudden. Please, please, please go away. I yelped as the creature drew itself up on its hind legs and rested its front paws on my knees. Not daring to move in case it felt like tearing me to pieces, I whimpered as it continued sniffing. After a genuinely harrowing handful of moments, it finally decided I didn't seem all that tasty and returned to the ground, but not before licking my face for good measure. Good dog, honestly! I was relieved that I was spared from becoming its dinner, but... Come now! Why are you laughing? I was frightened! I could have been eaten! Oh, really now? Anyway. The beast turned its attention to the sack of fritters on the ground. I suppose that it smelled those first and had been looking for them the whole time it had been assaulting me, but nonetheless, it had given me an awful fright. Even still, I felt the creature deserved better than dirty fritters. Leave those alone. They're all foul and soggy. The dog paid me no mind and wrestled with the sack until the contents spilled out onto the stone. Immediately, the dog began scarfing down huge bites of the sodden pastries, which were quickly becoming one messy blob. Don't. I suppose I had no reason to stop it. At the very least, it wasn't eating my face. Dog! Dog has finally appeared! Does that not bother you? Is there nothing better for you to eat? I reasoned that the dog probably had no reason to care that the food was soaked through with dirty water. I sat and watched it eat. It was deeply unpleasant, but I couldn't look away. Moist crumbs fell out of its mouth as it chomped loudly. The same food was being lapped up over and over again. Eventually, however, the laundry water seemed to win. The dog made a shuddery, spasming motion that made me flinch reflexively. I was unsure if it was about to wheel around to attack me. Instead, it made a ghastly hacking sound. Half-chewed slop poured out of its mouth. I don't like this. The fetid mountain of ruined pastry grew ever larger, yet it kept eating. It paid no mind to what assuredly must have tasted even worse after coming out than before it went in. I hate this. I hate this. Had this creature been a man, I would have begged him to stop. But all I could do is watch it continue to regurgitate and reconsume the horrid slop the sweet pastries had become. And then I heard a sound of trumpets. A mule and a wooden cart had arrived in the town square. No driver sat in its front seat. A wooden pole sat in place of a rider, reaching up into the sky. I moved my gaze up the pole to see that a large flag, or perhaps a kite, was drifting idly in the midday breeze. I held my breath as the cart passed me by. Another cart passed me by, and then another. Each flying a new color, a different flag, a new kite. They drove in circles around the square. I think there were a dozen in all. The dog chased at the tails of the mules as they walked past, dodging out of the way of the wheels at the last possible moment each time one came too close. In between each cart's passing, the little creature would return to its prized mound of filth for another bite before getting distracted again by the next donkey's tail. The trumpets blew again, this time much louder, deeper, more mournful. A new kite joined the procession, this time not a simple flapping cloth, but an intricately adorned effigy. A man. His face was chiseled handsomely, his expression stoic. 2 poles held this effigy aloft, one in each of the man's wooden hands. As this cart passed me, the effigy's head turned to face me. What the fuck is going on? His eyes met with mine, and I realized there was no effigy at all, but a real figure. His gaze felt terrifying and peaceful all at once, and he beckoned me to follow him. The dog had disappeared, only its horrid meal remained. I took care to avoid stepping in it as I left my perch on the low wall and followed the cart as it peeled away from the procession in the square. I assume it continued behind me. I do not know. I was transfixed by the cart ahead of me. Okay, what's with the chromatic aberration, huh? I followed the cart and its floating rider through empty streets. I felt disconnected from my body, as if my footsteps were happening after I'd already performed the next. I was drifting over the cobblestones. I felt as light as the man above the cart did. I don't like that shadow. The sight of the effigy had already made me weep, but I could feel a confused urge to burst into sobs welling up inside. But I also felt light, calm, and even joyous. I felt everything there possibly was to feel at once. As the cart reached a dead end, however, I felt a moment of doubt. I did not want the sensation to end. I doubled back, hoping the cart would turn and lead me again. It did no such thing. I felt a brief moment of panic as I turned around to perhaps coax the man to follow me and saw that it had disappeared. I gasped and lunged around again, hoping I had just missed it passing me. No such luck. What is fucking going on? I don't get this. I spun around again and again until I realized I was no longer touching the ground. I floated above the village. I could see all of the streets, all of the houses, all of the nasty little fiefdoms and the people who ruled them. I was being pulled up and up by some force that I knew I had to give myself over to. This was right. This was where I needed to be. A strange sensation that was being tugged up by the scruff of my neck eventually gave way to a feeling of blissful control. Yeah, it's just like some weird fucking hallucination. I was flying now, just as the man above the cart had been. I was flying higher, in fact, and all the people below me could see what their cruelty and indifference had wrought. My ascendance, their abandonment. But then I felt that hand around my neck again, firmer this time, more assertive. I was dragged by the throat the rest of the way up to my destination. A plateau above the village overlooking the lake. I struggled to breathe. My breath was ragged. I begged with whatever it was that held me to let go. Eventually, I was flung to the grass. I fell on my back into the cold dew, my head crashing against the dirt. I felt a ripple of pain emanate from the back of my skull all the way out through my whole body. I could not move anymore. I stared into the clouds. They were a deep gray, heavy with rain. They covered the sky almost completely, save for a bright spot growing brighter above me. Ah! All-seeing, all-knowing. I don't like this! I don't like this! The clouds parted, and the man I had followed appeared between them. He was gigantic, magnificent, terrifying. His piercing stare kept me pinned to the ground. The trumpet sounded one final time. The man finally blinked, and with slow and regal grace he withdrew between the black rain clouds that flanked him. It began to pour. I was all alone. What the fuck? What the hell? What do you mean? Why are we looking at the titty lady cart now? Huh? Why is the cart being pulled by geese? Sister? I thought I saw you wandering up the hill. Are you all right? You'll catch cold if you stay out here too long. Come on, up you get. Oh, what's gotten into you? Good thing I stepped outside when I did. I'd hate to think what would have happened if you gotten stuck up there all by your lonesome. You feel quite clammy. Where'd your friends get to? Did you get lost? You were the new one, Easy to do around here. I still have to second guess myself sometimes if I wander further than the inn. We can send you up to the Abbey once you're warmed up. Are you hungry? I'll tell the wife we have a guest. Lucky enough, we've always kept enough around for 3. Is this how she's gonna get her answers about Catherine? Poor girl, she is fucked up. Like, she is fucking mentally broken right now. Holy shit. Here you are. Well, eat at your own pace. You should eat, though. Climbing that hill all by yourself, that's hard work. And those shoes, no less. Did something happen? She looks quite dazed. Sister? Did someone get rough with you? Or did you have a fall, perhaps? I imagine it'd be easy. That path hasn't been taken care of in donkey's years. Is there anything we should tell your abbess? Eat up, dear. This is not on. If one of those towny bastards mistreated her, they won't hear the end of it. She's shaking her head. Thank God for that. You try to eat something. Whatever happened has clearly rattled you. Catherine? The dead woman? No. No, she means our Catherine. Birthmark on her face. If you say so. I'm rubbish remembering that sort of thing. The tall woman from the estate. You remember? So she really did take the vows. Well, I'll be. Yes. She lives in the Abbey now. I cannot bring myself to look at them. And do you think she could kill someone? What sort of question is that? Well, yes. Harold! It's common knowledge! Even still, you're upsetting her. She's clearly a little touched right now. What is common knowledge? Well, Harold, do not upset her any further. She killed her husband, didn't she? Now look what you've gone and done. Who was her husband? The lord of the estate by the lake. It was a terrible scandal. And there was proof? Well, not that I know of. It's proof enough, I suppose, that she opted to take the veil. We should stop talking about this. It's not proper. Why would she kill him? It had something to do with infidelity, if I remember right. It's not spoken of anymore. The whole village put it behind them when she left. And who is the lord of the estate now? Truth be told, I can't be arsed to keep up titles and whatnot. New lord only visits occasionally, I think. A house with a murder like that hanging over it. I can't imagine it's very comfortable to stay there long. How did Catherine's husband die? He cut his head clean off with his own sword. Huh. That sounds familiar. Lots of beheading going on, don't you think? Lots of beheading. Or so they say. I wasn't there, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But one way or another, he ended up without his noggin. Nasty business. Nasty place in general, this hill. Something here must drive folks mad, I reckon. First Catherine, then our James. Which a poor something will grab you. I'd move, but that's a task easier said than done. He spoke so freely of the horrid crime. It was common knowledge, even. The answer, it seemed, had been available to me all this time. Several simple questions were all I had needed to ask. At the wife's urging, I tried to eat a little more of the pottage they had so kindly provided. It didn't take, however. I was elsewhere still. I felt shame. Shame for how long it had taken me to make any forward momentum on my task for Catherine's sake. Shame for how simple the connections I had needed to make seemed now. I felt shame that it had taken a vision to put me on this path. What I had just experienced was a divine course correction. The kind of thing reserved, I imagine, for good sailors lost at sea or troops wandering in the desert. That I had been deemed worthy of this kind of direct messaging from God spoke very highly of Catherine. Surely I felt there were more important people to be helping than I. Perhaps I had been aided in their stead. Perhaps there was a prayer out there left unanswered because I was too foolish to do a very simple job. Perhaps, as impossible as it may seem to suggest, I was stupid enough to put a strain on God's omnipresence. Matthew 6:28. Considerate lilia agri quamodo cressunt, non laborant neque nent. Perhaps I am lower than the lily, which thrives while wanting for nothing. So dramatic, I know. But was I? Am I to think it? God provides for all, and God is not limited to any one action at one given time. Still, I feel sometimes that I could just be that wretched. Of course, as I might remind myself in a better mood, that's conceited talk. Or perhaps I'm allegorizing the flowers and the birds too heavily, as Augustine warns us about. Who am I to complain, after all? I've suffered far less than Job, yet here I am lamenting more than he ever did. Whether I am damned or just conceited, there is no path that leads me away from shame. Ah, that must be your friends. The man stood up to get the door. I did not turn around. I was deep in thought, staring into that fireplace. The flames were more comforting, more understanding, more understandable than any pair of eyes I'd ever looked into. I could hear pleasantries being exchanged, footsteps on the wooden floor. I could feel two cold, wet presences approaching behind me. Soon I would have to leave the comfort of the fireside to join them. Hedwig. Sister Moira. Sister Eustace. Can you forgive me? It was pointless to wait for a break in the rain, so my companion said. The ride back up the hill to the abbey was much soggier than the trip down. Some of the travelers in carts flanked by armored horsemen passed us by at the village outskirts. They looked just as miserable as I felt. I could hear raindrops plinking against their helmets as they hurried into town. We sat in silence for the first third or so. I looked out of the back of the cart towards the farmhouse chimney, yearning for the security of that fireplace until the building was out of sight entirely. I told the superior this was a bad idea, you know. You were wrong. Oh? Yes. I learned something very important today. Really, no. Yes. It would be difficult to explain. We have time. Now, Eustace. I've already forgiven the poor woman. There's no need to torment her. I'm not tormenting her. I'm curious. Well, after we split up, I watched a parade go by. There was a parade? No, there wasn't. I'd finally given up on trying to stare into the increasingly distant fireplace and turned to face Eustace. She looked tired. So what do you mean, a parade? I mean exactly that. I'm sure you can understand. I had a vision. Really, now? Yes, I swear it. I saw a parade. A procession of carts with no riders, all carrying grand kites and banners. And one of them, I thought at first, carried an effigy. But it got more mysterious after that, I suppose. What happened? Yes, tell us. This is very interesting. Well, I followed that particular cart for a while. I suppose that was how I ended up wandering away from the town square. Understandable. I did tell you to stay put, but I might make an exception for a vision. Eventually, I lost him, but then I was carried through the air. I know this sounds quite strange, and then whatever courage the fire had given me had finally waned. I could not bring myself to explain the entirety of my experience to Eustace. His expression remained, dare I say it, inscrutable. And then I came to, I suppose. I'm not quite sure how to describe it. You flew? She walked. That farmer saw her climbing the hill. Do you not believe me? I believe you felt like you were flying. I felt it. I saw it. I was in the air, however briefly. The man said he found you lying down in the grass at the top of the hill, getting soaked by the rain. Oh wait, wrong voice. God damn it. I know it sounds hard to believe, but it's what happened. Eustace sighed deeply and pulled her hood tighter over her head. People don't fly. Perhaps flying is the hard word. I was being carried? It's not like I had control of my faculties in the air. Like you were plucked from the earth by God's own hand. Well, yes. Moira, the man saw her climbing the hill. So he says. Maybe he saw her after she had come back to the ground. Or maybe both things are completely true. How would that work? Well, Hedwig could have been carried, and maybe the farmer was shown an image of her climbing. I mean, she would have been far away from the house, just sort of a shape, so he would go up and find her. So God carried Hedwig up the hill and showed an image of her to a man who was already nearby. 2 divine revelations within, 10 or 15 meters of each other. Darcy has visions all the time. Why is Hedwig having one so hard to believe? So now we have 3 people in close proximity all having grand visions. It does beggar belief, just a tad. I think it's beautiful. Maybe this mountain is just special. Eustace let the squelching of the mud beneath the cartwheels answer for her. I just think it's possible, that's all. At any rate, it's a moot point to argue. I don't think Hedwig is lying. I just don't know if I can accept that it really happened. What about Darcy's visions? You've got quite an interest in those, haven't you? Darcy's are different. In what sense? Well, she's never claimed to be flying in any of hers. What does happen in hers typically? Why don't you ask her and spare me the Inquisition? That wasn't called for. It's been a long afternoon. You can say that again. Can we all please make up before we get back to the Abbey? I'd like that. I'm sorry for being so hysterical. You're not hysterical. It was a cruel idea to force you into coming, I think. I'm sorry for insisting we stay longer. I wanted to tell Moira she didn't know the half of it. She didn't deserve to worry about having forced me to do anything when the Superior demanded it in the first place. No, my behavior was inexcusable, as it is all too often. I thought I caught a glimpse of Eustace rolling her eyes out of the corner of my eye. Perhaps she was just adjusting her spectacles. I can appreciate that this trip was an extenuating circumstance. Yes, I think next time I will stay at the Abbey if it's all the same to you. We should at least take you on a picnic or some such. Small steps, you know. You can't stay cooped up in the Abbey forever. I thought that was rather the point. Oh, you know, you have a dark sense of humor sometimes, Hedwig. There was no handshake this time, but I did not feel like I should push things any further. The rest of the ride up to the Abbey was silent, but at the very least, it was a slightly less uncomfortable silence than the one that preceded this conversation. What is happening to Hedwig? You think she's becoming, like, actually paranoid? I mean, I don't blame her. She's been fucking ripped out of the only life she's known for decades, threatened by a ghost, one that was fake, but another that might be real, her cell broken into. She's seeing fucking visions, going out and being fucking abused by the people. I don't fucking blame her for breaking. I didn't like the uncertainty, but it would have to do. The rain was showing no signs of letting up when we finally arrived. I was particularly bedraggled. The indignity of the laundry water incident was something that would stick with me permanently, and as soon as I hopped out of the cart, I made a beeline for the dorms to change. Oh! Hedwig, where are you off to now? The dormitory. I must get out of these wet robes, or I'll never be dry again in my life. Why don't I draw a bath? I had to admit, this sounded like a wonderful idea. You know, I think I would like a bath very much. We all would after an outing like that, I think. What day is it again? November the 21st, I think. Perfect. I froze. I had not realized that Moira had meant we should all bathe together at once, and I did not like the idea at all. Oh, perhaps I'll have one tomorrow. Nonsense! You'll catch cold if you don't. Do we even have time to heat up water for it? With any luck, someone else already had the bright idea to take a bath today. I couldn't help myself. I groaned aloud and pulled my hood over my eyes. What's the matter? I suspect. Well, you don't have to join us, Hedwig, but I think it'd be a good idea. Well, that decides it. Curse my wretched body! I'd have escaped this humiliation if it weren't for that little sneeze, I'm sure of it. Oh, go on then. You two run up and get your change of frocks. Eustace, would you mind getting mine? On it. We made our way upstairs to the dorms quickly, dripping water all along the way. At the top of the stairs, I nearly ran straight into Darcy. Oh, good, you are back. I was just looking for you, Eustace. Hello, Darce. Do you have a minute? I need your help with something. Of course. Hedwig, would you mind getting Moira's clothes? Hers is the door between Catherine and Darcy's. Oh, yes, I can do that. Eustace nodded, and Darcy hobbled away back down the staircase. Eustace stopped for a moment on the landing, however, and turned to me. That reminds me. You should talk to Darcy later, you know. Huh? about your vision. Oh, yes, I will try to remember to do so. Eustace nodded, then disappeared down the stairs after Darcy. I quickly scooped up my dry frock from my dormitory. No suspiciously placed books on my dorm bed, I noted. It felt wrong to intrude in Moira's room, but at this point I desired nothing more than to get this whole exercise over with as quickly as possible. I opened her door and slipped inside, on the lookout for her spare clothes immediately. The last thing I wanted to do was gawk at somebody else's room uninvited. I could not help but notice how neat and tidy it was, however. There was a beautifully carved crucifix hanging on the wall above her pillow, and her reading desk was meticulously stocked with papers. A handsome quill sat next to an ink pot as well. To cap it all off, there was a beautiful little box resting on the desk next to the organized papers. The wood was clearly expertly carpentered, and it was gilded in a regal yet understated fashion. The whole room had a sense of carefully considered elegance to it. It was perfectly fitting for Moira. Simple but radiant, not vain but reverent. Please do not tell Moira I just described her as simple. I did not mean it as an insult. Approachable, uncomplicated, steadfast in her positivity. The bath situation is a perfect example of what I meant. I had been so cruel to her in the village, and to be perfectly honest, Eustace wasn't exactly kind to her in the cart either. But Moira's instinct was to bring us closer together. There's a simple beauty to that. I think so, at least. Anyway, I quickly identified an impeccably folded set of clothes next to her bed, underneath the window. I scooped them up quickly. As I turned around, however... Ah! No! The pile of clothes I was carrying, I think, had brushed up against the quill resting atop her desk. I watched it tumble end over end to the floor, carrying the ink pot with it. No! Black liquid oozed out of the pile of broken glass. I scurried away and closed the door behind me in a panic. I checked the bottom of my shoes. There was nothing there, thank God. In reality, it was dead silent, but I promise you I could hear the bubbling, oozing, and dripping of the undoubtedly expensive ink I just splashed all over the floor behind the door. If it's not one thing, it's always another with me. Was I being punished for dawdling once again? Should I have emphatically refused the offer of a bath and instead made a beeline to the superior's office? Should I have gone then at that very moment? Truthfully, I only came to that conclusion a bit later. In the actual moment, all I could think about was what to say to Moira, or if I would say anything at all. It's shameful to admit, but I was frankly terrified of putting any strain on our relationship at all after my embarrassing display in town. Moira was endlessly forgiving, but I worried that even I could find an end to her graciousness if I kept imposing upon her. And so, I decided I would leave this. I couldn't leave quickly enough. I practically flew down the stairs. Suddenly, I was very eager to get into a bath. Anything was better than being caught red-handed with a broken bottle of ink, even burying myself in front of Moira and Eustace. Drink some water, give me a second. Moira was already in a tub by the time I arrived. She beamed as I entered the room. I kept my eyes low and deposited her change of clothes close to the edge of the wooden tub. Ah! Was Eustace waylaid? Yes, Darcy needed her for something. Well, thank you kindly. I realized there were 2 tubs similar to the one I had used to bathe my first time out of my cell. At the very least, I was relieved I was about to submerge myself in water rather than stand awkwardly in one of the many smaller wash basins stacked against the wall. I had been using those to wash myself whenever I could squeeze in a trip to the baths alone after I discovered to some horror that communal bathing was considered the norm here. I thought 2 big tubs might be nice. The water's not hot, but it's pleasant. You filled these up fast. A miracle of engineering. This abbey is quaint, I will say, but I'm very thankful for the thorough plumbing. The builders didn't skimp on that at the very least. She raised an arm to point at the wall behind her, and I instinctively shut my eyes. Oh, don't be silly. Anyway, the faucets are back there. They're quite quick. I had my own faucet in the cell, actually, but I didn't know it was connected to anything greater. Oh, you should take a walk around the cistern one of these days. It's quite fascinating. It's the oldest building here, if you can believe it. 200 years old at least, and it serves the kitchen, the baths, the lavatorium, and keeps it all separate. I'm glad to hear it's all separate. I'd never feel comfortable here otherwise, but it's apparently not far off from the kind of water management you find in the richest castles. Truly, we are blessed. It might not always feel that way, but yes, I think we are. How does it work? I must admit, I couldn't tell you. Sister Catherine showed me a diagram she found in the library once, but it was a bit complicated for me. I know much more about how bodies work than buildings, I'm afraid. Speaking of, she leveled a finger at me with a mischievous glint in her eye. Are you going to get in the bath? You're looming a bit. Oh, well, go on. I'll shut my eyes, I promise. She squeezed her eyes shut in a fashion that she might have intended to be jovial, but I couldn't help but feel condescended to. Nevertheless, I sighed and began to gingerly shed my layers. I balled up my damp clothes next to the empty tub and stepped in as quickly as I could. If I could avoid being seen at all, that would have been grand. I take it you're in? I am. The water was not as warm as the bath Darcy had drawn for me after I had first left my cell, but it was still a relief to sink into it. Moira opened her eyes again, blinking comically. This is nice. Indeed. I sank as low as I could and pulled my knees up to my chest. With my chin resting in the water, I could still peer at Moira over the lip of the tub. I did not want to be seen, but I also did not want to be rude. So at the very least, I maintained eye contact. Black and blue. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry, I was just thinking aloud. Your humors, they're black and blue, aren't they? Well, mostly black, with a little phlegm for color. Does that sound about right? No points for guessing that, I reckon. Eustace had appeared in the doorway. She was already removing her hood as the door closed. I looked away out of modesty as soon as I saw that she was casually shedding all of her clothes and haphazardly tossing them aside as she walked. Well, it's my job to notice these things. Do me next. That's easy. You're as phlegmy as they come, with just as much yellow bile sloshing around in there for good measure. You're like a big, clever soup. Goodness gracious. When are we eloping? Damn, okay, alright. Moira laughed, and I could hear her flick some water in Eustace's direction. Then I realized something that gave me an instant sinking feeling. Well then, who am I sharing with? Oh, good question. I didn't really think about that. Well, hurry up and decide. It's getting nippy. Can we not get a third tub? We only have the two big ones. We could play a game to decide. Too late, I've already made my mind up. I braced myself, but the splashing sounds that followed came from the other tub. I opened my eyes to see Eustace looking as nonplussed as ever, sitting next to Moira, who seemed wholly unperturbed. That's interesting. Eustace took her habit off, but Moira did not take her habit off. That's interesting. Thank God, I thought. I've never seen you without your cap, Hedwig. I've never seen you without your cap, Hedwig. I'd guess you had black hair, but I suppose I'm still surprised to see it. Really? I feel like I knew the moment I saw her. Are my humors that pronounced? Yes, but whose aren't? You put much more stock in that sort of thing than I do, I suppose. Well, it is my duty to know. True enough. What color do you think my hair is, Hedwig? You're always wearing that thing in the bath, but I think I know. I'm asking Hedwig. Moira was still wearing her cap. She gestured at her head, just dripping water on Eustace's bushy brown hair in the process. I wouldn't really know how to deduce that. Take a wild guess. I frowned, squinting at Moira's eyebrows from across the room. Some sort of, I don't know, dark brown? Chestnut brown? Does the accent not give it away? Ow! Oh, she has red hair, doesn't she? Moira elbowed Eustace, chuckling. No cheating! Feels like there's a clue you want me to recognize I'm just not seeing. Hearing. Top of the morning to ye, Hedwig! I don't get it. Oh my god. Let's say that. With an impish grin, Moira tugged her cap up a little. A few locks of jet black hair draped across her face. Oh. Huh. Just like you, Hedwig. How nice. Consider me surprised. Did you expect a fiery Irish redhead? You win, you win, you win. I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. In fact, I was slightly irritated. I hadn't expected anything. How could I have? Even the considerate and kind Moira couldn't remember that until recently my entire world had been a few meters across. Sorry for the misdirect. I couldn't help myself. Red-headed. Like King David? King David had red hair? I thought he had brown hair. What does it say in the Bible? He's described as Rufus, which means red-headed. Oh, I always took that to mean he was, well, you know, red-faced. As in, his whole head is red. Really? Well, I can see that interpretation, but... Besides, in Song of Solomon, I remember thusly, Dialectus meus candidus et rubicundus. My lover is red-headed. My lover is red-headed, his hair curly and black. Caput ejus aurum optimum, come ejus sicut elite palmarum, nigre quasi corvus. Golden face is usually similar to red-headed here, I should think. You might be right. This is so exciting! I'm caught between two true scholars! It's like I'm at a real council. It's our job. That's right. Still, I like Hedwig's interpretation. It's fun to think about David having red hair. It's dramatic. I didn't care for Moira's use of the word interpretation here. Either Eustace was correct or I was, and I didn't much like the idea of being wrong. I was grateful for the support. The conversation subsided for a while, and I became all too aware of the fact that this was a particular state for three women who had been at each other's throats earlier in the day to find themselves. I worried that Eustace and Moira felt the same way and prodded them with questions. So, do you all do this often? I should hope so. Bathing is very important for your health. I think she means, you know, together. Oh, yes, well, it's a little embarrassing at first, I suppose, but it's efficient, isn't it? I don't really plan around it, but there's enough of us here that you're going to run into someone else eventually. It's how things are done the world over. The Romans had huge communal bathhouses. Monks wash together too. I must admit, though, a private bath every now and then is to die for. I suppose I've been lucky. Whenever I've come to use a wash basin so far, I've been all by myself. Is it difficult? Being around other people, I mean. I really should have made sure this wouldn't be too big of a leap for you, especially after the day you've had. I'm quite all right. But I'd rather no one looked at me. Ever? That's right. Not while I'm in the nude, certainly. It's nothing. We haven't seen before. They spoke in unison. Eustace down low, Moira way up high. Still, all the same. But I understand. If I take my spectacles off, you'll just be a pale smudge. Would that help? Well, I'd prefer that over being defined. Right you are. I'll pop them off when it's time to dry off. By the way, Eustace, are you ever worried you'll drop your eyeglasses in the water? Those are really expensive, surely. Unbelievably. I'm lucky to have them. They're huge. I dread to think how much they cost. Is glass expensive? Very. Oh, goodness, yes. I'm sure you've noticed that there aren't too many glass windows here. Let me think. There's the Superior's office window, the chapel. I've had these for a very long time, and I hope they last. My eyesight's always been dreadful, but it could always get worse. Goodness, I'll pray for your sake. I wouldn't wish couching on my worst enemy. Couching? Couching? Yeah, what's couching? You cut the eye open, and then, ugh, what the fuck? I won't go into details, but thank you. What is what the? Is this like some kind of like old fucked up surgery? So, Eustace, tell us, how did you afford those? That's a little forward, don't you think? True, but, well, we're already in the bath, aren't we? Fair enough. I did some work for a glassmaker a long time ago and took these instead of monetary payment. Oh, what sort of work? Same as I do here, really. Information organization, maintaining a library, managing orders and logging events, that sort of thing. I was about to say that sounds like a lot of work even for a pair of glasses, but I suppose none of us are being paid at all here. I get by fine. I don't miss the old job. What made you come here? Well, I had always wanted to retire to the countryside. And once I had a sturdy pair of eyeglasses, I reasoned, what else could I possibly want for? Oh, I don't know. A rich husband, a beautiful home. I never wanted those things. Nor I. I did once upon a time. Now, though, I agree with you two, I think. At the very least, it'd take more than that to get me away from here. You know, over the past few weeks, I've been so overwhelmed by everything new to me here. I'm not sure I will ever truly get used to it. This life of asceticism might feel simple to you, but it'll never be simple to me. I was prepared to spend my whole life of much less than all this. That is a very helpful perspective, actually. Yes, that's important to keep in mind, I think. Are you feeling better after everything that happened today, Hedwig? I don't know. Most of all, I just feel embarrassed, as I feel about my behavior in the Misericorde, yet still. Forget about it. Yes, there's no need to worry, really. I think I would fare worse if I were in your shoes. And we can help you get better. In fact, I think it's our responsibility. Perhaps it was because we were all relaxed from our baths, or perhaps there was something to be said for being naked and vulnerable in a room of other people after all. But this second round of apologies for the day felt genuine. I wondered how the ink on Moira's floor was faring. It was hard to relax with that in the back of my mind. The conversation slowed down as we all focused on washing and scrubbing, and I soon realized that the most difficult challenge was yet to come. When we're all done and it's time to, get dressed, can I go first? Of course, but why? Well, it's just like we've been talking about. I'm not used to all this and... it's a bit embarrassing. Yes, that's it exactly. Won't it be more embarrassing having us just sitting here watching you? Don't confuse her. I'm trying to help. No, she's right. I mean, the most embarrassing would be all of us at once. Why? Because then you'll both see me, and I'll see both of you, and we'll be close to each other. What if Eustace and I both close our eyes? That would work. Oh, or what if you two went first and I closed my eyes? That seems more, efficient? I wasn't aware that efficiency was a concern. Honestly, this is the most I've ever had to think about being naked. Hedwig, I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy with letting you go first. And closing our eyes? Yes, don't be difficult. We just said we'd do our best to make her comfortable. I have no problem with that broadly, but doesn't it feel a bit weird to worry this much about seeing each other in the buff? Naked, I came from my mother's womb and all that. Who cares? It's not for us to judge. It is a little bit. What about Matthew 5:28 or Leviticus 18:9? Again with the Leviticus. We're not actually sisters. I don't think that passage applies. Sister is a term of formal address. It has nothing to do with being actual siblings of any sort. I know you know that. She was right, of course, but that just irritated me more. I'd really been counting on my superior scriptural knowledge to excuse me from being personally embarrassed, but alas. Thinking about it, Hedwig, I know this might be difficult, but how about we all just try doing it the normal way? Getting out and getting dressed all at once. I think Eustace is right to some degree. Judas! God damn! Just called her Judas? Hedwig! That's fucking dramatic! In what sense? That it'll be more difficult in the long run if you don't get used to it. I don't think that's anything you need to worry about. I'll just keep bathing alone when there's no one else here. Can we make a decision before I get too pruny? I think we should all get out on the count of 3. You said that you weren't going to push me as far anymore. Hedwig, there are 3 of us here, and we all like each other. You had a tough day in the village, but you made it back in one piece. Surely this will be easy compared to what you went through around all those strangers. I don't want to push you, but I also want to help you. And part of that, I think, might involve pushing you just a little bit. She's right. If I have no choice. I had nothing left to argue with. My day had been thoroughly confusing, and if mingling naked with my shameless sisters was to be the capstone to the whole affair, so be it. I don't think it was Moira's argument that convinced me, however. Or rather, it might have, but only because it made me consider the full weight of what I had seen in my vision. I didn't know what it meant, but I certainly felt compelled by a newfound drive to stop stalling in every little aspect of my life. You do have a choice, but let us get it over with. So what if I get a glimpse of your, socket? Eustace, please! No! Socket? Belle chose! Is that a euphemism for vagina? Really? Is it? Belle chose? That's French for pretty thing. That's weird. Good lord, that's old-fashioned. I'm a fancy little lady at heart. I took a deep breath and braced my arms against the edge of the tub. Eustace, however, was already standing up and drying herself off with a towel, and, you know, I've been meticulously detailed about almost every aspect of my days outside my cell, but would you mind if I glossed over the rest of this? I don't particularly feel like describing Eustace and Moira's bodies any further, or my own for that matter. I have excised several minor details from my story as it is, after all. I have been exhaustive, I will grant that, but I haven't told you every last meal I've eaten. I've not told you about every trip I've taken to the privies. I think our conversation in the baths was relevant information, but I think it will suffice to say that I did not enjoy getting dressed in front of my colleagues. But I was very brave about it. You're so brave! Hedwig, you're so brave! She's having social anxiety, but she's being so brave about it. You can rest assured of that. Pruning is just as much my responsibility as a chronicler's cataloging, wouldn't you agree? What is important about this ordeal is that I was actually quite courageous and did not make any sort of scene at all. I got dressed alongside everyone else and we departed the baths without incident. Incident, however, was not too far away. As we passed the rectory on the way to the cloister, Moira gently grabbed my wrist. Hedwig, why don't we go in here? Whatever for? Well, I have something I want to show you. In the rectory? We should go in. I was completely bewildered. The pair positioned themselves on either side of me and pushed me towards the step up to the large wooden door. Oh no, I thought, this is it. They knew I'm nosing around about Catherine's death. They were in cahoots. They were going to have me killed! No, I think I'd like to stay outside if it's all the same to you. Stop wriggling. Let's just go inside. It won't take a moment. Oh, thank you. What are you two doing? I'll scream. Rip Hedwig. I was pushed through the large wooden doors. I stumbled backward into the room, bumping my backside into a chair that I held onto to stay upright. Gingerly, I turned around and... Took you long enough. A crowd was gathered around the rectory table, which was itself so laden with food I could scarcely believe it hadn't buckled. Everyone present was smiling widely, and I felt reassured at the very least I was not about to be murdered in a dark room. Welcome back, Hedwig. How was the village? It was a valuable experience. I'm glad to hear it. What is all of this? A few days ago, some of the sisters approached me with a reminder that St. Cecilia's feast day was approaching, which, if I am not mistaken, would be the feast day closest to your date of birth, yes? Is this a birthday party? Is this a birthday party? I think so. I never had much need to track my birthdays while I was anchoress. Christmas was my mental marker for the passage of time. Although once I thought about it, I did remember receiving a few more handsomely prepared meal once every autumn for a few years when I was still a child in my cell. Your friend suggested we celebrate. I must admit, St. Cecilia's Day is one that we have often neglected to mark with a proper feast day, but we have all agreed it would be appropriate to throw a little bash for you. And for her saintliness, of course. I don't know what to say. Star of thanks and we can go from there. Everyone chuckled. I smiled graciously, even though Darcy's remark felt far more cutting than she likely intended. How rude of me! Thank you! Thank you all very much! Everyone murmured appreciatively in response and moved toward their seats. Moira patted me on the back as she walked to her seat with a twinkle in her eye. Everyone began plating food from the generous piles of poultry, fish, and vegetables in front of them. I thought I recognized some of the carrots I'd helped Darcy harvest not long ago. A plump roast duck sat in the center of the table. It all looked and smelled delicious. I apologize for the little ruse. Moira suggested the surprise. Guilty! Everyone here contributed a little, however. Isn't that alright? I do believe it was my general idea at first for collecting accolades. Yes, but I remember the feast day. Darcy somehow found time to direct the preparation of this meal and bake those wonderful fritters of hers to take to the village. Speaking of, did any of those make it back? Oh, no, we gave everything away. A shame, but not a surprise. I'm sure the town couldn't get enough of them. We all helped in the kitchen, too. I was distracted for a moment. Yes, Margaret, Adela, and Flora all graciously helped prepare the meal while you were in the baths. Which, let us not forget, I had drawn beforehand. That wasn't a spontaneous suggestion on Moira's part. This is also elaborate. Nobody has ever done anything like this for me before. And don't you forget it! Another chuckle went around the whole table. I smiled weakly. Tears were welling up behind my eyes. Marta and I had the very important duty of taste testing. That's right. Guess who set the table? Well, thank you all very much. This is... I could feel everyone staring at me expectantly. This is really wonderful. I choked my words out, overcome with too many emotions at once. Mercifully, being on the verge of sobbing past a simple gratitude to everyone else present. I was thankful, but I was also confused, anxious, hurt, terrified, as I mentioned too many things at once. I did not deserve any of this. I was not anyone's friend. I was a liar and a sneak. A dog set loose in the coop to root out a fox. I gawked across the table at the superior, who smiled back at me. I found it incredible that nobody got caught in the puppet strings connecting her and I as they reached between us for food. And, as it's St. Cecilia's feast day, I'll be performing a little composition of mine in the chapel after our meal concludes. If anyone would like to join me for a rehearsal beforehand, I would appreciate the assistance. Margaret, Catherine. I'd rather... There's nowhere else we'd rather be, but I do think we have some urgent matters to attend to once this is over. Urgent? Well, we were helping prepare all of this for most of the day. I have some important tasks I set aside. It was my pleasure, just so you know, Hedwig. Of course. Well, if it is urgent, of course you may be excused. Since when is anything around here urgent? Ow! Flora glared at Catherine, who maintained an utterly innocent expression. To everyone else, barring any emergencies, you are invited and encouraged to assist. Either way, we must all convene in the chapel later. This was met with a ripple of non-committal murmuring. I could tell the food was excellent, as was to be expected. But as I ate, I felt like I was sitting next to myself. I could not taste the juicy duck or the rich gravy. I was having described to me secondhand. Everything I could taste, smell, hear, and see felt like it wasn't really there. She's been dissociating this whole time, huh? This is her dissociating. Yeah. Are you feeling well, Sister Hedwig? Huh? Oh, my apologies. I have had a long day. Well, what was it like going down to the village? That must have been quite an adventure for you. It was. I'm afraid I did not adjust to the experience as well as I could have. It was all a bit stressful, but I think she'll do better next time. Perhaps a picnic or some such. Yes, we more or less came up with the same idea, didn't we, Hedwig? That's right. Wonderful news. I do apologize for the stressful assignment, Hedwig. It was the best I could come up with on short notice. She took a sip of wine, but kept her eyes on me. Well, I suppose it was all worth it for this. Hear, hear. Although I'm not sure. I was not sure I was worth all this trouble. I'm not sure how I can repay you for this. You all been very kind, and well, you do not have to repay us for any of this. Absolutely not. That isn't the point. If you really must feel like you're doing something for us in turn, you could keep your self-flagellating to a minimum. You could indulge us in the same questions about yourself. You've been out of that little cell for weeks now, and I still don't feel like I know you as well as I should. That's a fantastic idea. If she's up to it, no escape. I'll do my best. In that case, where are you from? Germany is where I was born, but I don't remember anything about it. I suppose you could say I'm from here? You do not remember anything about where you were born? There's very little I can recall about my life before I took my oaths, I'm afraid. Is there anything at all you can remember? Any particular places? Your parents? No. I don't have any recollections of my mother or father. I'm sorry. Crumbs, there's no need to apologize. I just can't imagine what that's like. Don't listen to her, Hedwig. That sounds positively blissful. That's... Of course, Catherine would say that, considering the scandal she left behind. Hedwig von Lindbarrow. I do remember one thing, I think. It's hard to know, in fact, if it's a memory at all. But it is, at the very least, something I know I could never have picked up in my cell. Everyone leaned forward slightly. I remember the smell of the ocean. That's all. For the most part. There are little bits and pieces I associate with that smell if I try my hardest to recall, but nothing substantial. I was just about to say, the smell of the ocean is one of my strongest memories as well. You and I have more in common than I expected, Sister Hedwig. Can you speak any other languages? I don't think so. My grasp of our own language leaves much to be desired. I'm not sure a second one would find purchase in my head. Perhaps you could forget a few phrases like find purchase to make a room. Catherine. I remember the saltiness of the sea, and if I try hard enough, I think I could describe the sound of waves. But beyond that, my earliest memories are, well, the office of the dead. Ah, how beautiful. Bit morbid for a first memory. I don't find it morbid. It's a very comforting memory, actually. The bishop read it for you, I presume. I'd have liked to have witnessed that. It was before my time. 20 years ago, I'd just taken my vows at Bourne-Grove. Yes. All in all, I remember it being quite a moving ceremony. That's lovely. I'm glad it's a positive memory for you. After that, it mostly becomes a blur. Not in a bad way, it's more like the rest of my life up until very recently was one long meditation. Things tend to move faster and slower all at once in a small place, don't they? No. Time is the same always, I think. That makes a fair bit of sense to me, actually. It certainly describes how I felt after moving here. Which reminds me, how were my old stomping grounds, Hedwig? Did anyone mention me? She shot me an oddly piercing look. No, I'm afraid not. A shame. I'm sure the place is falling apart without me. The grapes they've been sending up to us haven't been tasting as good ever since you left. You know what? I think you're right. Eat. We mustn't let all this food go to waste, and we're due in the chapel for that little recital. Everyone groaned, and the table-wide conversation dissipated as the sisters ate their fill. My stomach was still rather uneasy. I tried to eat as much of the admittedly delicious meal as I could, but I could not keep up with any of the others. I watched the others eat as I picked up my own plate. I couldn't help but notice that Angela was not present. I was not surprised that an event even partially in my honor did not interest her. I was inclined to agree with Angela's assessment. I was not worth this level of pageantry. As I forced the last bit of food down my throat, all I could think of was the disappointment Moira would feel as soon as she entered the dorms. Her unwarranted kindness toward me would dissipate instantly as soon as she realized what had happened. I looked across the table at her innocent, smiling face. She would hate me the instant she truly knew me. The piles of food slowly wore down to nothing. Conversation began to start back up again, albeit quieter, calmer. Everyone, it seemed, was at peace after this decadent meal in my name. I'll never get tired of your cooking, Darcy. Thanks, I will never get tired of doing it. Thank goodness for that. Really good work, Darce. Everyone chimed in with murmured agreement, even Flora, who looked uncharacteristically content. It was a lovely meal, Darcy. Thank you, everyone. If you would all excuse me, I must go and prepare for the recital while this gets cleaned up. Would you assist me, Hedwig? Yes, Superior. On her own feast day? What did she do to deserve this? More than Catherine could know. I don't mind. In truth, I couldn't wait to be free of the crowded rectory, if only for a few minutes. I gave the sisters a polite bow of my head and followed the Superior out of the room. The rain had ceased just as our meal had concluded. We walked briskly along the path between the rectory and the chapel. The evening air was cool and pleasant after the rain, although dark clouds were still threatening above us. The Superior seemed oddly tense as we approached the large doors. Somehow I knew nobody would volunteer to help me in the chapel. But it made for a good show, don't you think? Nobody will suspect a thing. My apologies, Superior, but I have no idea what you mean. She did not reply. What do you mean? The Superior held open the heavy chapel door for me and ushered me inside. I obliged and then let out an embarrassing yelp as I saw two people waiting for me inside. One was large and stately. I did not recognize him. The other? It is about time. My apologies, Sister Angela. Angela had been sitting in a pew near the altar, but she had risen to meet us as soon as the door opened. There was no mistaking her lanky form, even in the dim evening light. The person sitting next to her, however, Sister Hedwig, you have met this man before, although you may not recognize him. Oh shit, the bishop! Huh? Wait, this could be a problem! I wish we could be meeting under more pleasant circumstances, my child, but it is nonetheless a pleasure to see you in the flesh once more. It is an honor to meet you again, Mr. This is His Excellency Richard Bell, the Bishop of Carlisle. My goodness, my apologies, Your Grace. The portly man gently waved away my apology. Worry not. I have met no one else in a situation as unique as yours. I realize this must all be very strange to you. He knows? Yes. I briefed both him and Angela on the extent of our investigation this afternoon. I could not believe it. I gawped at Angela, who made a point of looking straight past me. My travels brought me here a little earlier than expected. Such a tragic situation. I felt I should be more present than my usually monthly visit where the sacrament allows. I will be here for just over a week to offer counsel to the grieving, and our investigation shall continue apace. The man sighed heavily. I appreciate your diligence, but it sounds to me as if you are staring the answer in the face and refusing to believe it. I do not think it's that simple. I believe, as does Hedwig after her own extensive research, that James Foreman is innocent. Which would mean one of your charges is a murderer. How could you even entertain such a ghastly idea? Call it one of my hunches. Have I been wrong before? Mabel. Come now. Oh! The Superior's name is Mabel. That's interesting. Have I? What have your other hunches been? I told you that I had a bad feeling about building a clock tower onto the side of the chapel was a foolish idea. And lo and behold, it fell down not a month into construction. A lucky guess. I have a storied career of lucky guesses then, Your Excellency. Before I was appointed abbess, this place was on death's doorstep. I've cultivated and pruned it into a garden. A simple one, perhaps, but a garden nonetheless. I do not mean to insult you, Mabel. In fact, it is my respect for your work that gives me such pause. How could I believe that one of the sisters you preside over, many of whom came into the church under your selection, would be capable of such a thing? The Superior did not have an answer for this. Oh, there was like a veiled meaning there. I recalled that I could hear her teeth grinding in the ensuing silence. I do applaud your ingenuity in recognizing that Hedwig here would be an impartial observer, but it seems to me this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Please forgive this hypothetical, dear sister, but why is Angela part of this trusted circle now? I would like to note that I too believe James Foreman is guilty. I am just entertaining your Superior's logic for a moment, if you will allow me. Of course. Well, Mabel, Hedwig, I understand, but what places Angela above suspicion? Sister Angela is my prior. It would be impossible, as well as unethical, for me to continue to keep this investigation from her. She found James and accused him to begin with. I should like to put her belief through its paces. She is to be your successor, indeed. And while I disagree with her position on Mr. Foreman's alleged crime, I love and respect her. I would like this to be a learning experience for her. My dearest Mabel, I know you love and respect all of your nuns. Why then must you believe that one of them is a killer? And why couldn't it be Angela? The Superior and Angela looked at each other. Angela grimaced. Well, grimaced more prominently than usual. I can account for all of my movements that the night Catherine was murdered. I'm sure everyone here can. And they can be vouched for. Oh? Angela was in my office at the likeliest time of Catherine's slaying. In your office? Complaining. I was vigorously arguing against the misapplication of yet more of the Abbey's funds and requesting action be taken against some of our sisters' poor behavior. There might have been more items on my list. It is my responsibility as prior to check the superior when I sense things are wrong. Nobody could possibly overlook your diligence. You mean to tell me that her alibi is that she was arguing with you long enough to be sure she was not involved? Forgive me, but that sounds rather unbelievable. The superior and I exchanged a glance. Angela looked away and exhaled sharply. It's true. All eyes turned to me. As ludicrous as this story sounded, I thought back to my conversations with the superior in her office. Those walls and that door were thick. As angry as it made me to imagine Catherine's death being overlooked by the Abbey's authority simply because they were bickering, it was all too plausible. That is believable, actually. My goodness. I will do my best to stay on your good side, Sister Angela. I will keep that in mind, Your Excellency. Why didn't you tell me this before? Either of you. I'd hoped to inform you last night, as it happens. I thought back to the events of the previous evening. Angela had indeed said something to me before leaving the Misericorde, or rather, before she was practically chased out by Catherine. My understanding of these events suddenly felt a little clearer. It certainly explained why Catherine bristled so much at Angela's presence. Did Catherine perhaps detect an ulterior motive in Angela? The same motive that so far nobody had detected in me? I made the decision very recently. The day before yesterday, in fact. It has been conspicuous enough to have you emerge from your cell and start poking around in these horrific events. Two of you at once would have been a touch obvious, I should think. I would have refused to do it. And now it would seem that I have no choice, Your Excellency. We are in a strange situation, to be sure. But I think between us, we can make sure justice is done. I will stay out of your way. I do not wish to involve myself in any investigation. It feels rather wrong for me to be anything but an impartial visitor. Of course. However, if anything suspicious is told to you throughout the course of your counseling... Suspicious? Where would the line be? I believe I'm giving you ample leeway to deal with the situation the way you see fit. I can think of precious few members of the diocese that would accept your actions in this situation, let alone grant you the freedom to make half the decisions you have made in the first place. I understand. Removing an anchoress from her cell is such a unique course of action, I would not even know where to begin explaining it to the Archbishop. I am not sure there is even precedent on the books for how you might be punished if the situation came to light. I hope, for all of our sakes, that your radical decisions have at least yielded some results. If they did, I might have an easier time preventing you from being excommunicated. Or worse. I felt a lump building in my throat. Wow! The Superior really bet it all on Hedwig. The Superior bet it all on Hedwig. Oh, man. I'd been so preoccupied with my own fragile situation at the Abbey that I hadn't even considered the wider world of church politicking. We will solve this mystery, and I will be vindicated. I truly hope so. England is at war with itself, and the last thing the church needs is to appear weak and ineffectual. It must be a beacon at all times, a standard for the world to live up to. We will not fail. Very well. There was a moment of silence as we all collected ourselves. The Superior looked grimmer than I'd ever seen her. She breathed deeply and seemed to stare right through the bishop, who was offering Angela and I an apologetic smile. Nobody spoke. There was little else to add, I suppose. The bishop turned to the Superior, his mood suddenly cheerful. I understand that you are performing in a moment. It would be an honor to attend. Yes, of course. She snapped out of her dark expression. We have just had a feast day for St. Cecilia, and I shall be performing a short composition in her honor. How delightful! Angela and Hedwig, I would like you two to meet with me in my office once we are done here. I would like you two to share your... Oh, hello. Am I still too early? No. Come in, take a seat. Catherine's smile evaporated when she saw Angela and I standing together. She looked away and busied herself with the doorstop so the rest of the sisters could flow in. Everyone else trickled in behind her. I noticed Margaret hanging back to whisper something to Catherine, who reacted to whatever Margaret had told her with an expression of bewilderment. She shook her head and shrugged. Margaret looked oddly panicked, but whatever Catherine meant with that gesture seemed to put her mildly at ease. I was just about to turn away when her eyes met with mine. I whirled away, hoping she did not feel as if I had been spying on her. The gaggle. Oh! I bet Catherine is worrying that Hedwig tattled about her fucking... I wonder if anyone overheard. The gaggle of nuns that had entered the chapel was haphazardly morphing into an orderly line to greet the bishop, who was standing near the front of the room. He had put on a hat in the intervening moments and looked much grander all of a sudden. Behind him, the superior fiddled with a portative organ. People were bowing to the bishop and kissing his ring gently. I realized that I had failed to properly greet him in this manner when I first entered the room and quickly joined the line. How far gone was I to forget how to address my betters? It had only been a few short weeks since I had left my cell, after all. I was standing behind Catherine in line. Darcy was speaking to the bishop ahead of us. She scarcely had to stoop to plant her lips on the ring, and she did so without saying anything. Catherine stepped up as Darcy glided away. Katerina, my darling, you look healthy. This place has done you good, hasn't it? I can't complain. The bishop chuckled and wagged a finger at her before extending his hand for her to kiss. She bent low and took his hand in hers as she planted her lips on the golden band. What a weird custom. She stepped away. I walked up to the bishop hesitantly, expecting to be admonished. I can't say I've ever had this happen before. This is a first for both of us, Your Excellency. Indeed, he chuckled. I was not joking. He held out his hand. My lips felt dry in the cool air of the chapel, but even in my sorry state, I could not let myself wet them with my tongue in front of this man. I bent down to kiss the ring. As soon as my mouth touched the metal, I realized I had no idea what to do. I bounced off awkwardly. I stood back up to face the bishop, hoping that had not been as unpleasant an experience for him as it had been for me. He simply smiled and waved me off. Ah, Margaret, how have you been faring? It is complicated, Your Excellency. I moved out of earshot and took a seat next to Moira. She had eagerly scooted aside to accommodate me as soon as she saw me leaving the line to greet the bishop. Everyone was seated eventually, all save for the superior and the bishop. The bishop stood off to the side of the altar as the superior adjusted her instrument. She cleared her throat and addressed the chapel. Hello, everyone. I don't mean to keep you all waiting, but I'm experiencing some problems with the organ. Sabotage! I'm drinking water, hang on. Oh man, I gotta regularly drink water while reading this shit or else I die. She pressed a few keys. The portative wheezed and sputtered but did not produce whatever sound the superior was hoping for. Well? She began to play a tune. The instrument... The instrument was not up to the task. One more try. Perhaps if I could feel Moira shrinking in her seat next to me. Oh no. There we are. Love. There was an echoing clunk as something inside the contraption shifted. Miraculously, the organ sputtered to life. A hushed voice from behind startled me. I could have been much worse, believe me. Oh no! She's trying her best. I do not wish to be unkind, so I'll simply say that I'm grateful that the superior shared her passion with us such. Is this a synth voice? This is absolutely a synth voice! Enthusiasm. When the performance finally ended, there was a smattering of applause. The superior gave her audience an odd little curtsy in response. The bishop awakened with a jolt and hastily started clapping along with us. Oh, man! I looked over at Moira, who was smiling sheepishly. She stood up as the clapping died down. I tucked my knees in to let her pass. She walked up to the altar to speak to the superior, clearly offering some congratulations directly. The voice from behind muttered in my ear again. They're all getting together to throw a real celebration in the cellars later tonight. Another voice whispered in my other ear, much later tonight, midnight in fact. I shuddered. Catherine was the last person I wanted to spend time with after midnight, but I wasn't sure refusal was an option from the tone of their voices. What sort of celebration? Your feast day, of course. But also, a proper wake for Sister Catherine II. Sending off the old chronicler and welcoming the new one, properly. With a gulp, I nodded slowly. That's a lot of celebrating for one day, but that's the spirit. You'll manage. You will come, correct? Yes. I heard the two of them stand up. Catherine patted me on the shoulder and squeezed hard. Her nails dug into my skin through my robe for just an instant. I'm looking forward to it. Uh-oh. Catherine's pissed. Catherine's paranoid. I was not enjoying this new relationship that had evolved between Catherine and myself. In retrospect, I wondered if our shared secret was driving her to attempt to be earnestly friendly with me in her own unique way. But I think it is equally as likely that she was taking some kind of sick pleasure in taunting me, even though what I knew of her liaison, were I the kind of woman to spread rumors, surely had her in check. As I left the chapel, I noticed Angela standing outside waiting for me. My heart sank. I might have opted for another hour of portative organ recital over this meeting. The superior says we should have this discussion ourselves. The rest of the sisters passed us by. Once they were out of earshot, Angela continued. She is busy and trusts me to get what I need out of you. And it might be suspicious if all three of us started taking meetings with her in her office. Yes, if I had not just explained the exact reasoning to you already, that would be a reasonable guess. Shall we walk? Lead the way. She turned around and set off down the path to the garden. Tell me what you know. But there's really not much to tell yet. You've had almost 3 weeks. What have you been doing? Well, I've had to adjust to a new life. I've been doing my utmost not to raise suspicions. I must confess I do not understand why it's taking you so long to adjust, as you put it. The way the superior told it to me, you positively jumped at the chance to leave your cell. That is not true! She turned to me, incredulous. Really now? I was practically forced out. I would have much rather stayed. Why would I willingly break such a sacred vow? One that I held for almost 20 years. It's true I was moved by the superior's cause. If there was a way I could have helped without leaving my cell, I would have chosen it. I imagined an alternate path, one where I maintained my life as an anchoress while the superior brought me information to judge impartially, and became very angry with myself. If I'd fought for myself, perhaps I could have solved this ghastly crime and not had my life's work thrown away. Interesting. Do you believe me? I can certainly see the superior glossing over some details in her zeal. She had already unlocked my door by the time I had a chance to protest. That does sound like her. Impulsive, bull-headed. No wonder she has such a fascination with Catherine's death. Do you not share that interest? Did Catherine earn some scorn somehow? Catherine earned plenty of scorn, but that's not what I meant. I just mean that despite all of their differences, she and Catherine shared a similar distaste for simple answers. It felt very strange talking to Angela this candidly. I would not describe her as being any more friendly than usual. In fact, her attitude was putting my teeth on edge. But at the very least, it was more of a real conversation than I was used to having with her. So you still think that James did it, correct? Even after the superior explained everything? Yes, I do. Oh. That being said, perhaps there is something you can tell me that would change my mind. Hence why I asked you to tell me everything you knew several minutes ago, I think. Well, I wouldn't know where to begin. I'm not even sure what I've seen or heard that would count as any sort of clue or hint. Why not start by telling me the strangest things you've seen first, and I'll decide what is pertinent and what is typical Lindbarrow oddness. In that case, though, the absolute most out-of-place thing I've seen is... I realize how ridiculous I might sound, but it was the thing weighing on my mind the heaviest. Go on. Well, I saw a ghost. Perhaps even a demon. At any rate, an apparition of sort. I can't imagine why the superior has summoned my help in this matter. I had heard that your ghost situation was an elaborate prank, no? One of Eustace's little dress-up games. That's what everyone thinks, but... You did not see a ghost. Let us move on. Tell me something else. I really did, though. Eustace can't account for one of the visitations I remember. Please take this seriously, Hedwig. I do not have time for folk tales. I definitely do not want to waste my time on this already spurious investigation being played for a fool. If this is an extension of some practical joke, please drop it. Tell me something else. I promise you this is no joke. Well, I saw the same figure a few other times outside my cell window on the second floor of the cloister. In fact, when I bumped into you on that first day I joined the congregation, I was running up to try and see who it was. Angela let out a deep, almost rattling sigh. It was Eustace. She did the same infantile act in the Misericorde later, no? Yes, but she swears that the time outside my window wasn't her. So she is lying. And she swears the ghost in the hallway was her, but I saw her not minutes later. In her night clothes, no less. In fact, the only person I didn't see on the landing after that incident was you. She shot me a look so piercing I physically recoiled. I was blissfully already fast asleep while all that nonsense was happening. My shrieking didn't wake you up? No, it did not. If you're really insinuating that I am your prime suspect, this would be quite a precarious situation for you, wouldn't it? She glared at me meaningfully as my head whipped around in a panic, realizing how utterly alone we were in the garden. I looked back at her in dismay and nearly screamed when I saw what she had produced in her hands while I'd been looking away. You. If I were a murderer who felt you were on my trail, I could have punctured your neck silently whenever I liked, as soon as we passed behind the hedgerows. She had idly held the knife out and pressed the flat side of the blade under my chin, tilting my head upward to forcibly meet her gaze. It's kind of gay. We stayed locked like that for just a moment before she finally retracted her hand. I jest. I carry this for self-defense. Some joke. I thought it was rather amusing. She twirled the little dagger in her hands idly. Where did you get it? I've had it for years. A keepsake from my old convent. I thought I'd lost it ages ago, but I'm glad to have found it again recently. It helps me feel safer in troubled times such as these. But James is locked up in the hospitalum. Your point? Well, if you're still feeling unsafe, perhaps deep down you know it could have been someone else. I doubt James is the only pervert who lurks around Limbarrow Tor. I see. Is that why you've agreed to help the Superior, then? You think there's someone else out there? Possibly. Her eyes narrowed. My tone was incredulous, at least as incredulous as I could sound while as nervous as I was, and she could see it. She let out a short, sharp sigh, and then took a step closer to me. I'd always been wary of Angela, but I'd assumed she was personally unpleasant, shall we say, at the very least. This outright malice she radiated, twirling a dagger between her fingers, was repellent to me. What will you do when we find out who really killed Catherine? Let me be perfectly clear. I firmly believe I've already found the man who really killed Catherine. I've stated it many times and will continue to state it. But I am open to investigating the matter closer, if only to prove that I'm correct. I found him skulking around not far from the cloister after Sister Charity found the body. On her morning walk, yes. The Superior did tell me that much. Morning walk? Charity does not take morning walks, at least no further than the cloister. What on earth do you mean? Of course she does. Angela let out another sigh, not as short and sharp this time, but filled with a sort of sympathetic condescension. She put her arms behind her back and began to walk again, leading me through the hedges. I really must press you for every last little detail now. More than anything else, I can help you find inconsistencies and lies. Do not take this the wrong way, but you are rather credulous. I do not mean to be insulting. It's to be expected of someone who spent 20 years locked up in a little room. My quarrel is with the Superior, not you. If this was how Angela treated people she had no quarrel with, I dreaded to imagine how she argued with people she did. I began to wonder if the Superior had ever seen Angela's knife come out. Charity does not take morning walks. She is too old and too fat for that sort of thing. The furthest she walks in the morning is from the dorm to the chairs she and Marta share. I would consider that a morning walk. It is a walk in the morning, I suppose, but I do not think that that is the image meant to be conjured by the phrasing. Charity would very much like the superior, or whoever she tells her story to believe that she exercises rigorously. This has absolutely nothing to do with Catherine's murder. No, it doesn't, but I think it makes for a good object lesson. People lie constantly. It is practically a reflex for most of the women here. Has Catherine recounted her story to you? I very quickly tried to remember exactly what I could say to Angela in response about angering Catherine. I was making too many enemies. She told me that she was forced out of Limbero village because of politics or some such. Not a lie, but certainly an obfuscation. Catherine was accused of murdering her husband. I did my best to feign surprise. My goodness. Did she really do it? In truth, I don't believe so. She doesn't like to talk about it either way. I imagine it must be very hurtful to discuss, especially if it was a false accusation. Yes, which is why I relented finally after arguing with the superior for long enough. As sure as I am that James is the culprit, I must admit that the prospect of being wrong haunts me. I spoke to James. He's in a lot of pain. Similar pain, I think. I'm drinking more water. We had completed a loop of the garden. Angela doubled back, and I followed. Neither of us spoke as we made our way back between the flower bushes. Angela appeared deep in thought, and I was hopeful that I could find an excuse to take my leave as soon as possible. However, she finally stopped and began to recount the facts she had organized in her head as we walked. I was stuck listening. Charity found Catherine in the cloister, beheaded next to the murder weapon. She alerted the superior, whose office I was in at the time, as we had spent the whole night arguing about the various issues around the abbey. When I left the office, I ran into Eustace coming up from the cellars and told her to rouse the rest of the sisters and search the west side. I myself immediately began a search of the grounds east of the cloister, while the superior comforted Charity. I found James skulking away from the abbey, and Darcy discovered his bloody cloak not far from his cart. That is the story, as meticulously detailed as I can tell it. Now, have you heard or seen anything that contradicts these events, or casts new light upon them? I had to take a minute to rack my mind. I began to realize how little real investigating I had done. I suppose the mysterious figure doesn't count? It does not. Then, James claims he was not wearing his cloak when he delivered the mail that morning. That's something, surely. And you said Darcy found his cloak on the west side of the abbey, yes? I see what you're getting at. James was found on the east side, but his cloak was on the other end of the abbey by the front entrance. Yes! Surely this proves he's telling the truth. I remember it being particularly windy that day, as it often is here on the mountain. It is possible his cloak simply came loose as he attempted to make his escape. I suppose that is possible. However, it is also possible it did not. Therefore, we must find a way to reconcile this discrepancy, one way or the other. Did James tell you anything that might help? He said that Catherine would be able to vouch for him. Angela looked at me with an oddly quizzical expression, and I quickly added some detail. Because he saw her in the library when he was delivering a letter. I see. And has Catherine confirmed this? Yes, but that wasn't enough for the superior when I told her. Why not? Because, well, I actually saw Catherine and James speaking to each other. Quite recently, in fact. Nonsense. It is true! I followed her out into the hills one night. I did not know if it was her at first. We crossed paths when she returned. Fortunately, I didn't overhear exactly what they spoke about. You followed Catherine all the way out to the hospitalum? Yes. All by yourself? Yes. Angela's eyebrows were liable to disappear underneath her white cap. And here I was thinking you always refused to take the initiative. The superior neglected to inform me of that particular wrinkle. I'm starting to think that I may have accidentally made Catherine the superior's top suspect. I must admit, it might make her mine. If I entertain the idea that it was not James, at least. You think her story is tainted because of it? It is hard to imagine a scenario where the two can be taken at their word alone, which I am afraid puts us in a stalemate. The superior sent me down to the village to see what the general opinion about Catherine's old murder case was. She wanted me to judge how believable the idea of Catherine killing someone was. What nonsense. It did feel a bit aimless. I'm not particularly used to the public. No, I mean, that's not why she sent you down to the village. She sent you all down there so the rest of the sisters could work on your feast. That's a waste of time and a rather tasteless way to treat a very serious matter. I agree. I guess that the others had certainly made use of my absence to prepare a surprise. The idea that the entire trip had been a frivolous exercise had me seething. All that anguish for nothing. She could have just kept me in the library for the day. Indeed. Well, the bishop is here now, and his arrival used to be your deadline. With him here. Angela stroked her chin with a bony finger and gazed at the rapidly darkening sky. Let us make a pact, you and I. Forget what the superior says. She means well, but she is not equipped to handle this situation. I don't understand. The superior is desperate to save face in front of the bishop. Their relationship is strained, that much I know. She believes that if she can present him with a satisfactory, no, not just satisfactory, salacious explanation to this tragedy, he will overlook years of shoddy leadership. She is looking for accolades. Oh, ulterior motive. Oh. For a promotion. So what do we do differently? Nothing. Only, when we have our answer, whether it is assurance that James was the killer, or if we discover the unthinkable and accuse one of our own, we report to the bishop ourselves. Why? To get the proper credit for our work, of course. Noble as her intentions might seem, I detect an undercurrent of self-satisfaction. I shook my head. Angela had spat a lot of venom this evening, but this was too much. I don't believe the superior is that selfish. For the first time ever, I heard Angela laugh. It was a deeply unpleasant, mirthless squawk. You just told me she pulled you out of your cell against your will. We're being used. You and I are both being used. I had no answer for this. The last bit of daylight was fading. Wind rustled the flower bushes, and for a moment I felt like I could hear the sea. Nothing else about our work changes. We can work separately even. I know you might prefer that. I certainly would. And we will meet with the superior at her request. But when it is time to give the bishop an answer, we give it to him. God, there's like multiple like allegiances and sides here. I need a fucking like pin board. I need a pin board with the note cards and the red string. Jesus. Angela held her hand out to me. I thought about my cell and the peace those walls provided. I thought about the sheer terror I'd felt when I'd heard the rattle of the superior's keys and the ugly sobs I'd stifled in my pillow that night. I thought about the childish rage that I'd felt as I'd thrown the soiled copy of Matthew from my window, and the sheer terror I'd felt when I saw whoever it was outside, watching me. I thought about Catherine speaking to me through the squint, and how I would never, ever have a conversation like that with another soul. I grasped my hand around Angela's wrist, and she wrapped her fingers around mine. I could feel the hard leather strap of the sheath as we shook hands, and immediately regretted my decision. Does she have a fucking sheath for her dagger around her wrist? She's got a fucking hidden blade! This nun has a fucking hidden blade! That's sick as hell, but it's also scary! Happy birthday! And let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. What the fuck does that mean? What does that mean? I feel like this is all coming to a head. Some shit's gonna happen. Mark my words, some shit! Very well, Her eyes narrowed, and she looked up at the shadowy abbey wall that loomed above the garden. What is it? Nothing. It was just a bird. Well, what now? Business as usual. In the morning, I think I will talk to James myself. Perhaps I can get something out of him you could not. Tonight, unfortunately, I have some work to go over with the superior. Oh! Marcy! Hi, Marcy! Thank you for the raid! Can one of my mods do the shout-out thing? If you please. There you go. Xenosaga Episode 1, Der Will zur Macht. Wow. There's too many Xenos. I don't know all the Xenos. There's too many Xenos. I hope you had a good stream, Marcy. And I imagine we will be forced to entertain the bishop until he retires. He's not staying in the hospitalum, is he? That'd be rather awkward, I imagine. I hadn't considered. Perhaps the superior will provide a bedroll and send him to the Misericorde. Anyway, what will you do next? The others are throwing a sort of continuation of the feast tonight in the cellars. I was told it was meant to be a sort of wake for Catherine. Angela's lips pursed ever so slightly. I had no idea that this proposed gathering was such an offensive idea to her. It sounded like a good opportunity to speak to people candidly. Perhaps I will find a new clue. Indeed. Well, goodbye. And with that, she left. This is the one with Bible Yuri? Yes. Just like 10 minutes ago, the main girl had a dagger pointed under her chin, like lifting her chin up. Like, you know, toxic Yuri, you know? It's good. That's good. Her shoulder bumped into mine as she passed me, and her stride looked a little less confident than usual as I watched her turn the corner at the end of the hedgerow. I sighed. The sun was still setting. I had a good while yet before I needed to appear at this controversial party. I wandered back the way we had come, past the chapel. The more I wandered around the abbey, the stranger I found the pile of debris lumped unceremoniously next to the building. The chapel itself appeared sturdy enough, so I was at a loss as to what all this loose stone was for. Hang on. Isn't this the clock tower? Isn't this the collapsed clock tower? The superior mentioned this, that it collapsed during construction. I gasped as I realized there was something moving atop the rubble. Black fabric draped over the broken rocks. What the fuck? I froze in place. Was this Eustace breaking her promise to me yet again? Or was I the first person in history to catch a ghost off guard? I squinted through the dusk, trying to decide whether or not to bolt. It turned around to face me, and I tensed. Only... Oh, hello, Hedwig. Oh, it's you! You gave me quite a fright up there! I think I already said that we needed to stop meeting like this, didn't I? We really do need to. It's no trouble. I'm just naturally jumpy, it turns out. I suppose that wouldn't be a problem in a cell. There's only one way people could come at you in there. Indeed. What are you doing up on a pile of rocks? Oh, just taking in the sunset. Sister Margaret? Even I won't buy that one. It was worth trying. Well, I need to get into the chapel. There used to be a way in through here, but when the clock tower collapsed, it blocked the passage. Have you tried the front door? The soup locked it for whatever reason. And the back door as well, clever clogs. Oh, well, that's a shame. I suppose you could just pray out here instead? Or anywhere. I don't need to pray. I need to... well... She ceased peering at the wall of the chapel, where I presumed the rubble had filled in whatever entrance she was hoping to find. Can you keep a secret? It's not anything bad, is it? No. Well, not really. Only a little at worst. Oh. So, can you? I sighed. What was one more on the pile? Yes, of course. Well, as I'm sure you noticed, the superior's organ sounded a little off tonight. Did it? She shot me a withering look. Anyway, that might have been my fault. A little bit. It was a little bit Catherine's fault as well, but she's busy. I need to get in there and fix the problem. What do you mean it's your fault? Sister Margaret! I remembered the first conversation Margaret and I had ever had with Catherine. I thought that was just a joke! A cruel joke, but idle chatter nonetheless. It should have stayed that way, but I fear that we might have taken things a touch too far. She looked a bit upset tonight, didn't she? As well she should! You'll get no argument from me. Anyway, that's why I'm up here. I'm trying to find a way in. Why not just come clean? Where's the fun in that? Besides, I would rather not be stuck on privy cleaning duty for the rest of the year. Well then, why not just do it tomorrow before service or after? That might have to be the plan, I'm afraid. But there's a good chance she'll try and play it again, and I doubt she'll maintain her composure another time. I thought hard about a way to help. I did not approve of Margaret's mischief, but was at the very least pleased to see some empathy and effort to correct her mistake. What about the bells? I don't follow. Someone is going to ring the bell before liturgy tomorrow, sir, surely. Whoever did it would have to unlock the door. Couldn't you get in that way? Margaret hopped down from the pile of rocks and grabbed me up by the shoulders. Hedwig, you're a genius. Someone is going to ring the bell tomorrow morning. It's going to be me! Oh, well, there you go. No, I mean, I can make that happen. I'm sure whoever got assigned bell duty this week will jump at the chance to sleep in after tonight's little party. I'll just go tell the soup that I volunteer right now. She patted my arm and began to jog away. See you in the cellars. Wait! What is a clock tower? Oh, right. Well, a clock is a bit like... Imagine if you didn't have to ring the bells at morning, noon, and dinner yourself. It's a big machine that does all that for you. Like the animal statues by King Solomon's throne. I had no idea we had such wonders here. Margaret looked oddly stern. The girl doesn't know what a clock is! Yes, I suppose it is a bit like that. It just seems a bit extravagant. The soup was very excited about the project, but between you and me, there were a few of us who thought it was a waste of money. But she had secured a good deal on the work and wanted it built quickly. Normally, these things reserved for big cathedrals and cities. You look at it now, and... well, it looks like we got what we paid for in the end. I had heard the superior thought it was a bad idea. I'm sure she says that now. So, why hasn't anyone moved all these stones? Have you tried lifting one? A fair point. I'm surprised you've never come across a clock before. They're expensive, but they're not exactly new. Isn't there one in Comedia? What's Comedia? Whoa. You haven't read Dante? Oh, yeah, the Divine Comedy. That's what she's referring to. Now that surprises me. Now is my turn to be uncharacteristically stern. I have not read anything that isn't biblical canon, errata, or scholarly commentary. Listen, I really must run and catch the soup. We'll try and catch up about this at the party, yeah? I think you'd probably like it. I'll look forward to it. Margaret grinned and then jogged off towards the superior's office. I sighed and continued at my own pace down the path towards the cloister, where I could see the torches being lit. I headed up the stairs to the dormitory. I reasoned that if I really was going to burn the midnight oil with everyone in the cellars later, I might as well get some rest. However, the dorms were livelier than I'd ever seen them. Everyone's doors were wide open, and I could see several sisters milling about. One was on her knees scrubbing. I froze in the doorway. The ink. My god, this stuff is resilient. You should take up stone carving, Moira. It's just as permanent and a lot less messy. It wasn't my fault. It was like this when I got here. Oh, hello, Hedwig. I stepped forward nervously, ready to be chastised. I could probably mix something up that would help. The last stain remover I remember you mixing up for me burned a hole straight through my robes. I appreciate the offer, Darcy, but I think I've got as much of it up as I'm going to. I'm sorry, Moira. Whatever for? I must have knocked it over when I was getting fresh clothes from your dorm. I really was a nasty little rat. Miraculously, Moira chuckled. There's no need to blame yourself. I think you would have noticed knocking a whole ink bottle over, silly. I almost objected, but then the small crowd around Eustace parted around for me to see who the culprit everyone had agreed upon was. Cat! The cat! The cat! The cat! Bastard cat! We really need locks if Catherine's going to have a cat running around. It's not my cat! Why does everyone think it's my cat? Eustace ignored her. This was a disaster just waiting to happen. I keep all my bottles under the bed so nothing gets knocked over. Eustace stood up, groaning a little as she bent her knees. I keep your shoes on out here for a while. I think I got all the broken glass, but you never know. Thanks so much for the help, Eustace. I did my best inside my room, but the paw prints... Eustace nodded and put the brush she had been using to scour the floor back into a wooden bucket at her side. The paw prints were not gone, but they were at least faded. Oh, Hedwig! You should tell Darcy about your vision. Her what? Oh, that. Oh, do tell. Perhaps it would be best if you took Hedwig into your dorm to chat about it a little more privately. Oh, right. I'm sorry, Hedwig. No, it's quite all right. Really, I had no reason to be upset. I'd made no demands for secrecy, and under normal circumstances, I'm sure I'd be thrilled. Perhaps even a little proud were I to be brutally honest with myself, to have it known that I'd seen a vision. But this day had been such a violent emotional journey that I couldn't help but feel annoyed. Darcy, on the other hand, looked positively elated. Yes, come with me. She beckoned me inside her room as the rest of the group dispersed. She shut the door behind her and gestured for me to sit on the bed. It was hard to find a spot that wasn't covered in books, bags, tools, and containers. This is exciting. Have you had a vision before? Never in my life. What happened? Well, it's rather unpleasant to tell you the truth. Oh, they often are. I've seen a lot of gruesome things in mine. According to Eustace, anyway. What sort of gruesome things? Head chopped off, stuff on fire, men with too many eyes. The list goes on. How frightening! I think it is worth it for the ones that are less scary. And really, the scary ones are important too, I think. They're a rich tapestry. I think that's a very good way to look at it. So, what did you see? No holding back. Start before the vision, actually. What were you feeling? She had produced a quill and paper from her little reading desk. Well, I was rather upset. I had a horrible time in the village, truth be told. Sorry to hear it. And I sat down in the town square. I told her everything in much more detail than I'd given Eustace and Moira on the ride back up to the Abbey. It was easy to be forthcoming around Darcy compared to almost everyone else here. Wow. Exciting. Is it now? Oh, incredibly. What can it mean? No idea. Oh. Is something wrong? No, just I was hoping you might be able to help sort it all out. I would be happy to help, but I can't give you the answer. I don't understand it. I wouldn't know where to begin understanding it. Well, it is probably about God. I suppose that much I had gathered, I think. So you didn't know where to begin after all. What do these things say to you? I don't know. You must know, otherwise you would not have seen them. What if it's an omen? I wouldn't know then. If God is trying to tell me something, surely it would be something I needed to know and didn't. Darcy shook her head. It was odd seeing her look so authoritative. Even in the garden, she never commanded this sort of presence. God would never show you anything you did not have the capacity to understand. God may not speak in words, but he understands a language. How else would he communicate with us now and the Israelites then? The Jews and the Romans. How would he reach the heathens in the east? Or the bloody French? The French? Those fucking savage French? The French? God showed Hildegard a shape of light and let her conclude it was a map of the cosmos. He even sent Moses a burning bush before he spoke plainly. And he sent me a vomiting dog? Perhaps he is yet to speak plainly to you. Or perhaps he already is. She emphasized this point with a dramatic gesticulation. I wasn't sure whether to be amused or frustrated. Do you understand any of the visions you've seen? Not entirely. If only Catherine were here. She understood hers very quickly, with my help, of course, which gives me the utmost confidence that I can help you. We can translate what God is saying to you. I would appreciate that. I am yours. However, I must think on it. Of course. There really is no great rush. She scrunched up her face and started stroking her chin, and I realized she meant to start thinking right away. I stood up and bowed my head. My thanks, Darcy. She nodded gently. I really wonder what Darcy is going to have to say about it, because it was freaky as fuck. It was really freaky. The way that figure in the cloud just had those fucking fish eyes. Just black, empty fish eyes. I did not like it. I left to retire to my own room. The crowd that had surrounded the ink spillage had dispersed. Only Moira remained, leaning against her door, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen her. Any luck? We're going to keep at it. Good. She looked pensive and preoccupied. I'm sorry. Oh, it's no great loss. I can always ask the superior to send away for more. I just worry that damn cat is going to cause more trouble elsewhere. I'm sure we have some spare ink in the library. Oh, I might take you up on that. Although you might have to ask Eustace. I know she can be a bit particular about supplies, and so it can't hurt to ask. No, it can't, can it? You're right. Sorry to be so much of a downer. She fixed her gaze on the faint paw prints on the floor again. Eustace had clearly done her best to scour the stone. There was still a visible trail leading out of the dorms to the landing. Is it really so much of a nuisance? It sounds silly, but I don't trust it. I'm old-fashioned, I suppose. She sighed heavily. It was very cute once upon a time, but once it grew up, I had no idea it had been a problem for that long. You don't get the usual vermin up here in the hills. It's far too cold. Whoever brought it here just wanted a pet, I think. Another of this abbey's great mysteries. What are some of the others? I caught myself too late to keep this rather stupid inquiry to myself. I'm convinced my habit of answering every statement of a question will be the death of me. Luckily, Moira didn't find this question odd. Where to start? Who paid for it? Who still pays for it? Is it haunted? Ass. Darcy had emerged from her room without either of us noticing. Do you really think so, Darcy? I know so. I've thought a lot about it recently, and I finally know for certain. This place is very haunted. Oh, I hope not. Darcy shuffled past us, leaving Moira looking a little worried. I wanted to say something comforting to Moira, but even the evil sigil carved into the walls loomed in the back of my mind. It was becoming harder to disagree with Darcy's assessment. I was curious what had prompted her escalation from a little to very haunted, and thought about following her to ask, but Moira kept talking. That night on the landing, when you said you saw a ghost, I know Eustace claimed credit, but the more I hear from the others and the more I see myself, I sometimes wonder if it's any comfort. I don't know what to believe about it either. What was it like? Terrifying. And then when everybody assumed it was a practical joke, I felt very small. I would too. I must apologize for throwing my lot in with them. It's no trouble. I can scarcely believe it myself. It goes against everything I know, everything I hold true. How can I judge anyone for dismissing my account? You are too forgiving. You did not see it. You have nothing to apologize for. That's not true, actually. What do you mean? Remember in the village, when I whispered to Eustace? I was telling her that we had to stall so we wouldn't get back to the Abbey too early. Since everyone was getting ready for the feast, which is meant to be a surprise. Oh, man! That's what Hedwig got paranoid over? Oh, that sucks. Oh, that sucks. Well, it was a lovely surprise. So how can I be upset? Moira smiled. Her eyes were a little damp. I felt horrid for keeping you there against your will. I felt horrid being there, but I think in the end this day ended up being rather good. Really? That's a relief. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve and stood up straight. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, though. We've got a wake to attend, remember? Right. I think I'm going to lie down for a little while to recuperate. You should. It's been a long day, and it's going to be a long night. Of course. She smiled at me and then stretched her arms above her head, letting out a huge yawn. I think I might do the same. Knock on my door if you get up before I do, won't you? Of course. We went into our separate rooms. I think I fell asleep the moment my eyes shut. I wonder how much of this game there is left. I'm questioning right now. I'm asking myself if the party in the cellars won't be a climax. I find myself feeling like that will be a climax of the story. I awoke with a start. That damn knocking in the walls was back. I looked out the window to see the moon was high in the sky. At the very least, I could thank the creaky old building for waking me up at the right time for this party. I groaned and rolled out of bed. I really should have stripped down before sleeping, I felt too warm and a bit pasty despite the cool night breeze coming through my window. I adjusted my clothes as best I could. On my way out, I nearly tripped over Medea, which I picked up and put on my writing desk next to the desiccated copy of Matthew. I was getting a little tired of having books of odd import lying around my dorm room, let me tell you. Hello, Hedwig. Hello, Catherine. Margaret? We should go. Yes, we should. They looked oddly serious. The vibes are off. The vibes are off. Moira emerged from her dorm room as well. She looked rejuvenated since the last I saw her. The nap had done her some good. Hello, shall we? I suppose we must. Moira looked surprised by Catherine's maudlin tone. We traveled to the cellars together in silence. The abbey looked quite mysterious at this time of night. The pale blue light of the moon was competing with the flickering orange torchlights. As we approached the cellar, I realized just how close we were to the Superior's office. Is this really wise? Surely the noise will carry. I doubt it. We'll be deep in the cellars, and these walls are thick. Not to mention that bloody great doors of hers. I doubt she'd mind. It's all for Catherine, after all. Of course. Only a few torches down in the cellars had been lit. I could already hear music echoing around the cool underground walls. It was altogether rather eerie. A sort of fortress of casks had been erected around what appeared to be the designated celebration area. A few of the barrels had been arranged like little tables carrying wineskins and cups. Adela had one of the makeshift tables to herself and was playing some sort of card game with Sister Charity. Whatever the game was, it finished as we approached. Adela flipped a card over, causing Charity to erupt into giggles. Hello, everyone! Would any of you care to see the future? No, thanks. Catherine and Margaret made non-committal grunts and left me alone with Adela, who was already shuffling the cards. You should! It's not half bad! I was already planning to leave early and I got a... What was it you say, Adela dear? Your present card was the 3 of Cups inverted. In that position, it can refer to a lack of time to socialize. Dead on, isn't it? Anyway, I can't stay. These old bones won't survive staying up this late. I just wanted to raise a glass and pour Catherine's name at least. She was really quite drunk already. You should stick around for just a short while longer. I believe we are giving a toast to Catherine in just a few minutes. Oh, you've talked me into it. She toddled off. Well, would you like a glimpse of the future, Sister Hedwig? I'm not sure I like the look of this. Is this some kind of Iberian custom we shouldn't play around with? Adela frowned as she continued shuffling her deck of cards. This is an Italian pastime my mother enjoyed, Sister Hedwig. Oh. I felt rather embarrassed. I kept doing this sort of thing. I decided that agreeing to participate would be the best mea culpa I could offer, despite the misgivings I had with the activity. Hedwig keeps doing microaggressions. Go on, then. She rapped the cards against the table sharply. I will turn over 3 cards. The first card will represent your past. The second will describe your present. And the third card will give you a hint of your future. Are you ready? This was silly. Yes, let's try it. The 7 of Cups. It represents illusions, imagination, creativity. As you can see, it is inverted. From where I am standing, I suppose. This is about your perspective, so yes, it is inverted. This card represents your past. You were in yourself for a long time, were you not? You spent a lot of time with nobody but yourself. Nothing but your own imagination. Clinging to this past will not help you. Your second card, the present. I have revealed the world. Once again, it is inverted. In this reverse position, the world represents your inner torment. You are secluded. You are lonely. You are withdrawn. Oh, now you're just being mean. Because something has been troubling you, yes? Yes. Something you need to get to the bottom of. Something that has been preoccupying you ever since you left your cell. Am I correct? Yes. Adela voice. Zawarudo! Of course I am. You were alone in yourself for many years, and now you have been set adrift. That conflict has been eating away at you and driving you further inward. The world in reverse, believe it or not, could be a good sign, Sister Hedwig. It represents your current state. You might yet find the answer to your questions within yourself. Choose a final card and we shall see. I pointed at the topmost card on the pile. I did not particularly care for this game, and I wanted it to be over as soon as possible. Is that strength? Or is that justice? Oh no, the Queen of Swords, okay. Reversed. All reversed cards? That's really ominous. All of your cards have been reversal, Sister Hedwig. That is interesting. Is it dangerous? No, it just means that you face many challenges. Lovely. A reversed Queen of Swords in this position means you will continue to have a hard time moving forward into the future. You must make some decisions, Sister Hedwig. This Queen in reverse suggests to me that you must find some strength inside of yourself to move beyond your current predicament. Perhaps there is something small you can think of and change. I will have to think on it. I desperately wanted to leave the table, but Adela was shuffling the card pile again. Let us ask the cards a question. Think hard, Sister Hedwig. What would you ask the cards? You do not need to speak it aloud. Ask the question yourself and then pick a card. I hated this game, but I didn't want to upset Adela. I had already seen a real vision today. I reasoned that I had the strength to endure this silly little pagan ritual for one more round. If I could not be flippant openly, I decided I would ask these cards something disdainful, if only in my own mind. Is this real? That's what I landed on. I gestured to the bottommost card in the pile that I could see peeking out from beneath the others. Let us see. The High Priestess. That is interesting. What does it mean? Well, to be honest, I think this card is imbued with such mystery that your answer is unclear. I did not like this answer at all. I stared at the card deep in thought. It felt oddly similar to looking at my reflection in the bath. Isn't it funny how every card is imbued of enough mystery to mean whatever you like? I jumped. I hadn't noticed Eustace looming. Yeah, I mean, tarot is basically just aided cold reading, I'm not gonna lie. Or, in this case, in Adela's case, in this case right here, that was hot reading. That's really all it is. The cards have malleable meanings, it is true. That makes them better at their intended purpose, not worse. Oh, I don't disagree with you there. Adela shot Eustace a nasty sneer. I was relieved that someone else was the target of her ire now, at least. Do you not have any sense of wonder? No love of mystery? The church holds plenty of mystery for me. Isn't that right, Hedwig? There's a wide world, and I believe we must be flexible if we wish to spread the faith around it. I opened my mouth to refute this, but I caught myself before saying anything. There was no need to draw Adela's attention back to me. I may have found this talk blasphemous, but at the end of the day, I was a bigger coward than I was a devout Catholic. Another thing I was coming to loathe about myself. I'll leave you to it. Hedwig hasn't even gotten a drink yet, isn't that right? Yes. Goodbye, then. She busied herself with her cards. Eustace tugged at my sleeve and pulled me away from the table, although I did not need much convincing. She can get a bit funny about her hobbies. I'm surprised she is allowed to bring fortune-telling here. Those cards are blasphemous, surely. I'm not sure Adela thinks that hard about these things beyond the aesthetics. I would call her an easily distracted traditionalist. She led us to a free table near the edge of the makeshift room with thus far untouched cups, and then began pouring 2 drinks. You've had a long day. Indeed I have. How are you feeling? She nudged a full cup in my direction, which I took with a quickness that surprised even myself. Tired, but also very, very awake. Like I could sleep forever, or never again. Darcy was the same way when she started having visions. So you believe me now? I said I believed that you believed you had a vision. Ultimately, what I think does not matter. She drummed her fingers on the top of the barrel cum table. The barrel cum table! Ah! She stared off into the distance, deep in thought. I want you to know that I am looking out for you. Do you understand that? In what sense? I can't say, but I promise it isn't out of disrespect. I am not being condescending. She was being very condescending. You being at a wake for Catherine, it feels quite strange, uncomfortable. And I felt similarly about you working in the library as well. I keep glancing up from my work, expecting to see her sitting across from me, writing God knows what. But instead I see you. And that isn't your fault, to be clear. But it stings every time. I can only apologize. I am no replacement for her. I was never trying to be. I was very angry when I first heard that you had volunteered for her old position. What a climber, I thought. You regretted taking such extreme vows and jumped on a rare opportunity to leave. I know several other sisters think the same way. I don't think that anymore, just so that you know. What changed your mind? You are fucking miserable. What? God damn! This wasn't something you wanted, was it? She peered at me through her thick glasses. I knew there was no way I could lie. She was clearly comfortable in her deduction already. No. The superior put you up to something, didn't she? Yes. I wish she hadn't. I sometimes feel the same. She wanted some objective eyes and ears, I take it. Oh God! She just figured the whole fucking thing out! She figured the whole thing out! The jig is up! She's not satisfied with the conclusion that that man killed her. Yes, that's it exactly. Of all her idle interests, this is easily the most annoying. She poured herself another drink. What could convince you to just give it up? That's why I tried to scare you, you know. You're braver than I thought. Nothing. Oh, please. There must be something. No, there isn't. I don't think it was James either. How could you possibly have an opinion on this? You never met either of them. That's not true. Catherine came to my hagioscope several times. Yes, to talk about what? Plays? You didn't know Catherine. Not the way I did. Or anything close to the myriad connection she had with everyone here. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you picture her? Companionship. Someone who I could talk to about scripture on a level no one else ever has. Yes, she was very good at leveraging people's interests. I know she left a few sisters hurt when she moved on from certain interests. Are you one of them? No. But that is certainly an opinion several people here may have. So you admit I have some knowledge of the situation. Why is it then that you want me to ignore all of this so badly? Eustace looked around to make sure that nobody was in earshot, and then leaned across the barrel to speak in a harsh whisper. Poking around for perceived conspiracies is what got her killed, and I don't want the same to happen to you. Oh, she's just out and saying it. She's just out and saying it. Catherine stuck her nose where it didn't belong, and that got her killed. Now, why does Eustace know about this? Why does Eustace have so much intimate knowledge of the circumstances of Catherine's death? You or anybody else? What do you mean? So you don't think James killed her? I didn't say that. Then Eustace leaned away suddenly. I intuited that she had seen someone approaching out of the corner of her eye and bit my tongue. Hello. Is this wineskin still full? Eustace began pouring wine for the two of them. They took their cups and settled in with us. The conversation with Eustace, it seemed, was over for good. Has Adela read everyone's fortunes yet? She told me I had a lot of anger in my past. Too right. Did you know that the death card doesn't always mean something bad? I nearly screamed when she showed me that one. Yeah, death also means renewal or a new beginning. I'm not sure the cards actually mean anything. They do mean something. They can mean everything, which is just as unhelpful. Still, it's a bit of fun, isn't it? As long as we don't take it too seriously. Margaret chugged the rest of her drink down and slammed the cup on the table. Alright, I suppose I should get back to the loot. She left the table and Eustace scooted around to better talk to both Moira and I. What's got Catherine in such a bad mood, do you think? She gestured toward the tall woman who was leaning against a barrel all by herself, looking positively ashen. Huh. That's not like her. Not at all! Do you think we should ask her? Maybe later. Not now. I'd rather wait until she's got less wine in her. I made eye contact with Catherine by accident while the others were talking. She sighed deeply, then looked away to pour herself another cup. That's really not like her. I had in fact seen Catherine in a similar state in the Misericorde not very long ago, when she had been staring into the fire and lamenting her lot in life. She had alluded to her old home life then. Now that I knew the rumors surrounding her exit from the village, I had a sinking feeling about what was bothering her. You don't think she really did what they say, do you? Kill her husband? Moira and I both coughed into our drinks. No, I don't think she did. No, nor me. She's a bit odd, but I don't think she's that kind of odd. Look who's talking. Laura had arrived without anyone noticing and looked ready to pick a fight for some reason. Eustace turned around to address her curtly. I never said I wasn't odd, but I think we can all agree Catherine and I are different kinds of odd. Never mind. Wine me. Moira obliged immediately, lifting up the wineskin to pour a mug for the impatient young woman. Go easy on the stuff this time. You're not my mother. Thank God for that. Laura stuck her tongue out at Eustace and left, presumably to go bother somebody else. Christ. I know it's normal for young nuns to act out, but she's been acting out for a long time now. I bristled at the curse, but the insinuation that Eustace found Flora's behavior somehow beneath her bothered me more. I opened my mouth to say something about it, but Moira got there first. It's probably for the best. She was always more tactful than me. You like to act out too, Eustace. Just in more elaborate ways, I suppose. A couple things. It's past 10, but I'm putting lava cakes in the oven, so feel free to keep at it. All right. Chat, we're staying up late tonight. Beth, could I have some water, please? If you don't mind. Thank you. I'm going to need some more hydration if I'm going to keep reading. We're going late. My pranks have always been elaborate and thought-provoking. What thought was dressing up as a ghost meant to provoke? Ah, a ghost. that is a provoked thought. That is true. We all laughed. Even Eustace. I wish I knew how to do that sort of thing. If I had been left to my own devices, I would have likely started another argument of Eustace. Woman to woman, Eustace and I had a relationship that seemed liable to fall apart at a moment's notice. With Moira around, I felt part of an inseparable trio. Eustace glanced around the room at Margaret, who was fiddling with her lute while standing on top of a crate. Catherine had wandered over to the makeshift stage as well and still looked a bit dour. Her and Margaret exchanged a few words. Neither of them looked thrilled. Honestly, what is going on here? Finally, Margaret shrugged. Catherine sighed, then appeared to pull herself together somewhat miraculously. Margaret strummed a chord and spoke loudly to everyone gathered in the cellar. Everyone! I know we have some very important drinking to get to, but there's someone who won't be joining us tonight who we need to pay tribute to. A murmur of approval echoed around the room. Someone who can't join us ever again. It has been several weeks since we lost our dear sister Catherine II. I am sure she'd be delighted to see all of you here. Annoyed, perhaps, at a few of you, but that's nothing a few drinks couldn't fix, I'm sure of it. Everyone chuckled, but I was left confused. What sort of mourning was this? We will never have a sister like her. I dare say there isn't a convent in the country who will. In the world, most likely. I miss having the competition. Her and I had unparalleled beauty, wit, and grace. I came out on top, of course, but it was very close. More laughter. But she handily bested me at other things. Her boundless love for others, her endless interest in all manner of scholarship, her frankly rabid hatred of Italians. I'll never forgive the Italians! Everyone found this one particularly hilarious, but I was more lost than ever. And the Spanish. Or was it the Portuguese? I can't remember. She certainly got her licks in on the English as well, which... She raised her mug into the air, and the crowd followed suit. Fair play. Fair play to all of it, I suppose. Where else but England would Catherine II get stuck with a convent full of Spaniards and Italians? She was Irish, of course. Moira put her hands together in front of her mouth and let out an approving howl so loud I flinched. Everyone else found this very amusing. She liked to remind us of that whenever she could. I once asked her, why not go back to Ireland then, when I was particularly irritated with some of her good-natured ribbing, and I swear this is true, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, my dearest Catherine, ignoring the fact that I must remain here as a nun, I would never consider Lynn-Barrow anything less than my home. How very trite, I thought. I still do most of the time. Lynn-Barrow rarely feels like a home to me. The hallways are drafty. What little work there is to do is tedious, and the tedium only increases when there is no work left to do. It rains all the time and it's freezing cold even when the sun is shining. That all being said, I realized something recently. I may grouse about this place, and I'm certainly not going to stop. But Lynn-Barrow certainly feels like less of something without Catherine II around. And I think perhaps if she considered it a home, I could too. So maybe it is home, for better or worse. I miss her, and I think I would miss all of you just the same were any of you to leave. Most of you. The crowd laughed again. Catherine raised her mug and began pointing at people in front of her. Charity! What will you miss most about Catherine II? I'll miss chatting with her about the past. Nobody else here wants to hear it. Too bloody right. Marta? I'll miss her assistance in the cellars. Laura? I'll miss having a real friend. Adela? I will miss having a sparring partner. Hold on to that one. I doubt you'll ever duel someone again. You two are complete mad women. Eustace? I will miss our conversations in the library. Someone Eustace enjoyed talking to. What a rare person she was. I think we only have one other here like that. Darcy? Sorry, what was the question? What are you gonna miss the most about Catherine II? Oh, I'll miss having someone to discuss ghosts and spirits with. Steady on! Moira? I'll miss her accent! She was choking back tears. Everyone chuckled sympathetically at her silly answer. It was a little taste of home, I'm sure. Hedwig? Only joking. Margaret? I could have shrunk into a mote of dust. I will miss playing music with her. And we'll all miss hearing it. Speaking of, Margaret, you did say Catherine wouldn't be joining us tonight. But perhaps if we drink hard enough and sing loud enough, she'll join us. Am I right? Come now, if I can't hear you, she certainly won't. Am I right? Everyone began stomping and clapping. Some people were banging on barrels to make extra noise. It was so raucous that I was worried the superior might descend the stairs to chastise us all, but nobody else seemed to mind. The evening descended into chaos from there. I had no idea what I was meant to do. Once Catherine's little speech was concluded, there didn't seem to be much else in the way of eulogizing at this wake. The sisters were all drinking, laughing, playing chess, and reading fortunes from that demonic deck of cards. Frankly, I felt sick. I stood at the edge of the cellar next to one of the barrels, holding a mug that I took the smallest sip from every now and then. I felt even more out of place here than I had in the Misericorde. I was confounded by the realization that that place, which is designated specifically for rule breaking, had felt less debauched than what I saw before me. Margaret played her lute for what seemed like hours, taking breaks only to swig whatever drink Catherine handed to her. Catherine herself seemed to be in a better mood than earlier, although she might simply have been too drunk to feel anything. Even Moira was acting far more depraved than I was used to seeing. She was dancing like mad, bumping into people and cheering and banging on barrels to create a makeshift percussion section for Margaret. Adela made her way over to me, smiling. What are you doing all the way over here? Oh, I'm just tired, that's all. Come and join in! I'd rather not. I'm happy here. Do you feel out of place? I just didn't know Catherine that well. You're not here because of how well you knew Catherine. You're here because everybody likes you. What rubbish. I didn't know what to say to her, so I took a sip of my drink in a feeble attempt to hide. I think I'm drinking water. You need to trust what the card said. Allow yourself to discover where you belong. I nodded in a non-committal way. Mercifully, this seemed to satisfy Adela, who danced off back towards the rest of the group. I could hear wood scraping against stone. Moira had pushed a crate next to Margaret and was clambering atop it clumsily. Everyone! She wobbled and nearly lost her balance until Margaret caught her. Thank you. Everyone, I think it's time we properly welcome our new chronicler. She pointed at me drunkenly and I froze. Everyone turned and raised their mugs to me. Catherine could never be replaced, but Hedwig is a lovely new presence here, don't you all think? I was practically begging to be struck down by a lightning bolt. Anything to end this embarrassment. The feast had been bad enough, but seeing the sisters fully uninhibited, smiling at me, seemingly entirely earnestly as they toasted me, it made my blood boil. I don't really know why, it just felt wrong. Looking at all those drunken, drooping faces gawping at me, I wasn't sure I wanted their approval. 3 cheers for Hedwig! Hup hup! I was rescued by an ugly sound. Flora had wandered over to one of the casks and attempted to open it, only to break the bung completely. Flora! What are you doing? The skin was empty. I was gonna get more and it just broke. Adela and Marta stormed over to the barrel to attempt to help. Flora was covered in red wine. Her wimple was undoubtedly ruined. You really are a piece of work, girl. That is not even the wine we are drinking. I bloody hope not. It smells awful. What did you do? I didn't do anything. It broke on its own, more or less. You ripped the whole faucet out. How did you manage that? I barely touched it. You're a bad worker and a worse liar. Get out of my way. Whatever. This was Sister Catherine's first batch of sherry, wasn't it? Of all the casks to break. Oh, this one is gone for good. Marta yanked Flora back towards her by the scruff of her neck. Ah! And smacked her face with raw power I wouldn't have expected from her. What do you have to say for yourself? Marta raised her hand again, but everyone rushed forward. That's enough, Marta? It was an accident. Huh. Marta let go of Flora and walked away to join Charity on the other side of the room. The cask was still gushing wine onto the floor. Everyone started inching backwards to give the dark liquid a wider berth. Well, that's the mood ruined. Oh, boy. Moira tried to pull Flora aside to comfort her, but the younger nun sprinted past her towards the cellar stairs. What should we do? There's not much we can do now. It will soak into the stone. Some got into the casks beneath it, too. Those are probably ruined now as well. Just from having something poured on it? This is a delicate business. What was that you said about it soaking into the stone? It will, believe it or not. Although a mop would not go amiss. No. Let it. What? What are you talking about? This is Catherine's sherry, right? The wine she worked on when she tried her hand at winemaking. We should let the Abbey have it. You mean Catherine made this? If there's a piece of her soul or spirit or essence, I don't know, then the Abbey should drink it. All of it. She can be part of the Abbey forever. Not just stuck in some barrels. Eustace, that is a beautiful idea. I've never known you to speak with such poetry. I have my moments. I agree. What a beautiful way to honor her memory. It is certainly unique. Befitting, I suppose. When you say all of it, Sister Eustace, all of it. Anything Catherine made. The mood had soured somewhat when Flora had broken in the cask, but a new buzz of activity was starting. Should we just pop the rest open? Let's smash them! That is more like it. A cheer went around the room. Should I get an axe from the workshop? Good idea. No, I have a better idea. Eustace! Why not use Catherine's sword? Ooh, isn't that dangerous? Absolutely. No more or less than an axe. What about spears? I would really prefer the axe, I think. Spears are more effective than both. I'll get Catherine's sword if it will spare us a lecture on troop tactics. Everyone except Catherine whooped and clapped. Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen! Is that not rather ghoulish? She was killed with it. The mood soured instantly. Oh. You know, I think that is exactly why we should use it. Should her sword's last act be so grisly, we have a chance to wield it to celebrate her. I resisted the urge to point out that the sword's most recent acts were to slaughter a goat and scare me silly. That actually makes some sense to me. I agree. It's fitting. I'll go and get it. Back in a moment. Catherine's mood had turned again. Nearly everyone else seemed convinced of this ridiculous idea. However, I think we'll be getting on. It was a lovely night, but I'm too old for all this. We need our beauty sleep, don't we, Marta? Waste of good wine. I'm sure we don't actually need to do this. Do what you like. Good night, everyone. They left. Margaret was huddled in conversation with Catherine again. They both looked quite serious, but Margaret was strumming a tune idly to cover whatever they were conversing about. Finally, Eustace emerged from the shadows once more. She carried that terrible blade with her. When the nuns invested in her caste-breaking plan started cheering, she held it aloft. Even Catherine joined in. Her dark mood had once again evaporated. She had turned back into the Catherine the first was... Catherine I was used to seeing. Right. Who wants to go first? Let me take a swing. It should be Hedwig. Of course, that is a much better idea. Very fitting. Oh, no, I couldn't. Go on, Hedwig. Eustace approached me and held the sword out as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The pommel towards me, the blade resting at her side, balanced flat on her palm. Now, be very careful. Grasp it firmly with both hands. Everyone was looking at me expectantly. I don't know. Hedwig, Hedwig, Hedwig! Hedwig, Hedwig, Hedwig. Everyone began chanting in unison, even Eustace. There was nothing else for it. I took the sword in my hands and everyone cheered. How does it feel? It's much lighter than it looks. I saw my reflection in the blade. It was an odd sensation. I suddenly felt very powerful. No. There's something in the blade. I hadn't even held the sword for a minute, and I already felt as if I were equipped to take on the world. I was surprised to discover that there was an engraving in Hebrew on this side of the blade near the crossguard. How odd, I thought. While I recognized the script, I could not read it. I didn't have long to muse over it, however. Step over here. Careful now to this cask, Sister Hedwig. Everybody else should stand back. Now, lift it up. I was not really listening. I knew what to do. With a speed that evidently surprised Adela, I swung the blade down onto the top of the barrel in front of me. Not too bad, but you must swing more confidently. Try. But I was already swinging the blade down again. The barrel gave way and red sherry came bursting forth all. Everyone cheered. The wine was all over my wimple and frock, but there was nothing I could do about that. I gave the broken barrel a few more gleeful hacks before Adela stayed my arm, laughing. Give someone else a turn. Who wants to go next, There are just enough casts for all of us to do one, I think. Everyone clamored around. Adela held her hand out to me expectantly. The sword? Hedwig? Oh, yes, of course. I handed the sword back to her gingerly. I didn't want to let go. The crackling energy didn't subside, thankfully. That's interesting. What took over her there? She really liked that sword. Adela took her turn next. She began her assault on the cask in front of her with a violent thrust into the dead center of the lid, as if she were attempting to pierce a wooden shield. The tip of the blade wedged itself between two of the planks, and she pressed forward with a slight twist. The entire lid bucked and split apart immediately. Adela was covered head to toe by the red sherry. She giggled and held the sword aloft, similar to the way Eustace had, and gave a mighty war cry. That is how it is done! The sisters present all clapped for the expert swordswoman, and she gave a little bow and held the sword out for the next contestant. Oh, look at her holding the sword, damn! Catherine stepped forward. The end of her cloak drifted atop a flood of wine that was spreading rapidly outward from her position. I suppose tomorrow will be a laundry day. We might need to get new frocks. It's worth it. One by one, the rest of the sisters attacked their designated wine casks. Catherine opened with a horizontal swing that the rest of us instinctively ducked. She apologized and instead popped her cask with a wicked diagonal strike that crushed the angle where the lid and rim met. She hacked away at the opening until the lid splintered apart completely. Oh, look at Moira! Moira's turn took a moment to get going, whereas I had been surprised at how light the sword felt. She clearly found it rather heavy. It was somewhat comical when she took the sword from Catherine and nearly fell over when the taller woman let go. She chopped away at the top of her barrel as if she were splitting firewood. It took some doing, but she got there eventually, and we all clapped and cheered as she gave us a slightly embarrassed bow. Eustace dispatched her cask with shocking efficiency, however. In 7 rhythmic strikes, left, right, top, thrust, she completely shattered the lid. She hit it more times than Adela, but both of them were easily the most practiced. Wait, Darcy! Darcy held her sword by the blade when she stepped up, prompting all of us to rush forward to stop her. All save for Adela, who began arguing that this was a perfectly valid technique. You'll hurt yourself. I wrapped my hands in my sleeves. It will work. A pommel strike is actually very efficient, especially against these barrels. Darcy is not a soldier. She's going to... Darcy gave the bung of the barrel a surprisingly swift bat of the rounded bottom of the sword handle, while the others were arguing. Leave it to Darcy to just hold the fucking blade. It popped free instantly, spraying everyone with sour-smelling sherry. Easy. Eustace gave her friend a withering look. Good work, Darce. I told you! Margaret, it's your turn. Catherine had to call across the room to get Margaret's attention. I had not noticed that she had wandered so far afield. Margaret? Margaret did not answer. She was sitting on the bottom of the staircase back up to the cloister, her head buried in her arms. Perhaps she had dozed off. It is rather late. And she volunteered to ring the bell tomorrow. However, Margaret was not asleep. Thank you. She lifted her head up from the depths of her cloak and stared at us balefully with glistening eyes. She's depressed. Okay, I should probably finish for tonight because Beth just brought me hot chocolate lava cake with ice cream. And I'm not gonna eat on stream. I hope I'll finish the game next time. Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow, tune in for what might be the end of Misericorde. Volume 1, but still. I'm hoping so. Okay, have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all later.